Welcome to Mastering QuickBooks Made Easy version 2016 by TeachUComp Incorporated. This course introduces you to Intuit's QuickBooks Pro accounting software program and will show you how to use this powerful application. QuickBooks is one of the most popular accounting and bookkeeping programs available today. QuickBooks Pro is a terrific program to learn, as the skills you will learn in QuickBooks can save valuable time and money by automating, organizing, and structuring the bookkeeping of your company. QuickBooks Pro is a multi-featured program that allows you to create invoices, create customer statements, pay your bills, write vendor checks, track inventory, and manage your payroll, as well as perform many other accounting and business management related tasks. Now, if you're ready, let's get started learning QuickBooks.
QuickBooks Pro displays the home window when you open a company file. In QuickBooks 2016, the home window contains two tabs, Home Page and Insights. You can switch between the content of the two tabs by clicking their names shown on the tabs in the upper left corner of the page. The home window is shown by default whenever you open a new company file, but you can close it by clicking the small X in the upper right corner of the window. You can redisplay the home window by clicking the Home button within the icon bar, or by selecting Company and then Home Page from the menu bar. The first content to discuss is the content shown within the home page. To see this content, click the Home Page tab in the upper left corner of the home window. The home page provides a starting point that allows you to access many of the most commonly used features of the program. It also shows an overview of the relationships between the various windows within the QuickBooks Pro application. The home page shows icons that illustrate the sequence of activities often performed when using QuickBooks. Each activity is shown as an icon within a diagram of related activities underneath a general heading displayed at the top of each section, such as customers or vendors. The flow of activities shown here is a really great way for new users to begin learning how QuickBooks is commonly used within businesses. For example, if you open the sample product-based business company file included with any version of QuickBooks Pro and examine its home page, you can see the different ways that the sample company can collect money from its customers illustrated within the Customer section of the home page. Studying the relationship between the icons can assist new users in figuring out how to use the program by showing the order in which the associated tasks should be performed. Also note that the icons shown within the home page can change, depending upon which features of QuickBooks are enabled or disabled within the currently opened company file. These features are often set when the user creates the company file using either the Express Start or Easy Step interview. For example, if you indicated that your company doesn't use estimates when creating the company file, then you would not have the estimates icon within your company file's home page after creating the company file. You can, however, also manually enable or disable features of QuickBooks after creating a company file, which can also change the icon shown within the home page. The most important feature of the home page is that you can click the icons shown within it to open the related task window. For example, clicking the Create Invoices icon will open the Create Invoices window. This allows you to have quick access to the various windows within the QuickBooks application. In QuickBooks 2016, you can also see an overview of how the company is performing by viewing the graphs shown on the Insights tab. To see the content of the Insights tab, click the Insights tab in the upper left corner of the home window. At the top of the window, you will see your company logo, name, and the date shown at the left side, and three buttons you can use to manage the information in this tab shown at the right side. Below that is a large bar or column graph with two smaller graphs below it that display income and expenses. If you want to add your company logo to this tab, you can click the Upload Logo area in the upper left corner of this tab to open an open dialog box. You can then use it to navigate to and select the logo image to use. Then click the Open button in this dialog box to add your logo to the tab. To print the content shown within this tab, click the Print button in the upper right corner of the tab to open a separate Print Preview window. You can preview the content and then click the Print button in the upper left corner of the Print Preview window to open a Print dialog box. You can select a printer and set printer settings within the Print dialog box. You can then click the Print button within the Print dialog box to print the graphs. If you wish to close the Print Preview window, just click the X in the upper right corner of the window. To refresh the data shown in the Insights tab, click the Refresh button in the upper right corner to ensure it displays the most up-to-date information. To select which graphs are shown within the upper portion of the tab, click the Customize button in the upper right corner of the window and then click any graphs that you want to see to mark them with a check in the drop-down menu shown. You must select at least one graph to display. Then click the OK button in the drop-down menu to apply your changes. You can also click the Cancel button in the drop-down menu instead to cancel any change you made. The graphs you choose to show will be displayed within the large column and bar chart section within the Insights graph. If more than one graph was selected within the drop-down menu, then you can click the left and right pointing arrows at either sides of the graph to cycle between the graphs shown. Alternately, you can click the small dots shown at the bottom of the graph to cycle between the graphs shown. The graphs at the bottom of this tab simply show income and expenses. For the large bar or column graph, as well as the expenses graph, you can click any data shown within the graph to display a quick report in a separate window that details the transactions that contribute amounts to the specific section of the graph clicked. For example, clicking the Payroll Expenses section of the circle shown in the Expenses graph will display a quick report on the transactions attributed to the Payroll Expenses account in a separate window. You can click the small X button in the upper right corner of the Quick Report window to close it when finished. Clicking any section shown within the Income graph will display the Income Tracker in a separate window and show any transactions contained within the specific section that you clicked. You can then close the Income Tracker window when finished by clicking the X button in its upper right corner. You can click the drop-down within the Expenses graph to change the time period of the expenses shown if needed. You can also click the Create Bill link in the upper right corner of the Expenses graph to create a new bill within the Enter Bills window, or click the Create Invoice link in the upper right corner of the Income graph to create a new invoice within the Create Invoices window. You can close either window if opened by clicking the X in its upper right corner. In QuickBooks, you have access to four main centers called the Customer Center, the Vendor Center, the Employee Payroll Center, and the Report Center. These centers allow you to perform many tasks associated with the topic of each center. For example, you can add new customers to your company file through the Customer Center. We will examine the tasks you can perform within the centers later in this tutorial within their associated chapters. However, you should learn how to access the centers now. You can open the centers in many ways in QuickBooks. To open the centers using the Home page in QuickBooks, click the Employees, Customers, or Vendors buttons at the top of those sections to open the associated center. To open a center using the icon bar, you simply need to click the associated button like Customers within the icon bar. You can also access each center under the associated command category within the menu bar. So, for example, you can access the Customer Center by selecting Customers and then choosing Customer Center from the menu bar. Each center will appear in its own window, which you can close by clicking the X in its upper right corner of the center window when you are finished using it. QuickBooks contains a menu bar at the top of the application window that lets you access all its commands and features. To perform a command, click a menu bar command category like File, Edit, or Lists to display a drop-down menu of subcommands within the selected command category. Then click the desired subcommand to execute within the drop-down menu. You can also use keyboard shortcuts to perform commands in QuickBooks. Keyboard shortcuts, if available, are listed to the right of the specific command to which they correspond in the menu bar. For example, if you click the Lists command in the menu bar, you can see the keyboard shortcut for the Chart of Accounts command, which is Ctrl+A on the keyboard. You can then click away from the menu bar drop-down menu to retract it. Next, hold down the Control key on your keyboard and then press the A key on your keyboard to open the Chart of Accounts window. If your goal is to become faster using QuickBooks, learning your keyboard shortcuts will assist you. A very useful but unlisted shortcut is that pressing the Escape key on your keyboard will close the active window. Also notice that not every command within the menu bar has a corresponding keyboard shortcut. For example, if you click the Lists command in the menu bar to display the drop-down menu, you can see that a command like Item List does not have a keyboard shortcut. However, there is a keystroke combination you can perform to access every command. If you press the Alt key on your keyboard and then examine the menu bar, you will see that each command category, like File or Edit, has a single underlined letter, for example the F in the File command and the E in the Edit command. If you hold down the Alt key on your keyboard and strike the underlined letter for the corresponding command category, its drop-down menu will appear. At that point, if you examine the subcommands in the drop-down menu, you will notice that each one of the subcommands also has a single underlined letter. At this point, you will no longer have to hold down the Alt key. You can just strike the key on your keyboard that corresponds to the underlined letter of the subcommand that you want to execute. So using the example of accessing the Item List command, you would simply hold down Alt plus L and then strike the letter I on the keyboard to access the item list. You'll find that every command has a keyboard shortcut if you follow this method. In QuickBooks, you enter information and perform tasks within many different windows. Unless you close the windows after using them, they remain open for ease of access. You can view a listing of the opened windows within QuickBooks to quickly switch between opened windows. This listing is called the Open Windows list. This feature allows you to quickly switch between opened windows without having to open and close them repeatedly while working. You can see the Open Windows list within the icon bar if the icon bar is placed at the left side of the application window by clicking the Open Windows button within the icon bar. The section at the top of the icon bar will then display the names of any opened windows. You can then click on the names of the windows within this list to toggle between them. If you have the icon bar placed at the top of the QuickBooks application window, then the method of viewing the Open Windows list is slightly different. In this case, you can toggle the display of the Open Windows list on and off by selecting View and then Open Window List from the menu bar. Selecting this command will both show and hide a pane at the left side of the screen, which displays the opened windows within the program. You can click the name of a window shown in this list to bring that window to the foreground of the stack of opened windows within QuickBooks. Another tool that helps you complete the most common tasks in QuickBooks is the icon bar. The icon bar is located at the left side of the QuickBooks window by default. However, you can also place it at the top of the window if you prefer. Note that changing its placement does impact some of its functionality in QuickBooks. The icon bar can also be hidden if preferred. When placed at the left side of the QuickBooks window, you will see the search box shown at the top of the icon bar. Below that section, you will see the icons for whichever section you currently have selected from the listing that appears towards the bottom of the icon bar. You can click one of these choices to change the icons displayed. The choices are My Shortcuts, View Balances, Run Favorite Reports, and Open Windows. When placed at the top of the QuickBooks application window, you will only see icons available for the My Shortcuts section, followed by the search text box. To change the placement of the icon bar or change its visibility, select the View command in the menu bar. Then select either the Top Icon Bar command to place it at the top of the window, the Left Icon Bar command to place it at the left side of the window, or the Hide Icon Bar command to hide it. You can choose to display it again if hidden by selecting either the Top Icon Bar or Left Icon Bar command to enable its display and placement. The icon bar contains buttons for some of the most frequently used features of QuickBooks. You can hold your mouse pointer over any button without moving it to view the description of the button in a little box called a screen tip. You can customize the buttons within the My Shortcuts section of the icon bar to add or remove buttons you want. To use the icon bar, click a button to open the associated window. For example, to open the Home page, click the Home button in the icon bar. You can customize the icon bar by adding and removing buttons. To do this, select View and then Customize Icon Bar from the menu bar to open the Customize Icon Bar window. All your current button choices are shown in the left window pane. To add a new button, click the Add button at the right side of this window to open the Add Icon Bar item window. Click the feature for which you would like to add a button from the list of choices shown in the box at the left side of this window. Then, from the scroll box to the right, select the icon to represent the function within the icon bar. To the right of that, there are two text boxes where you can edit the button's label and the description displayed in the screen tip for the button. Then click the OK button to add that selected feature and icon to the icon bar. You can then see the new feature appear in the scroll box at the left side of the Customize Icon Bar window. It will also immediately appear in the icon bar as well. You can repeat this process to add all the buttons you want. When finished, click the OK button to close the Customize Icon Bar window. You can then click the new button within the icon bar to use the newly added feature. To remove a button from the icon bar, select View and then choose Customize Icon Bar from the menu bar. In the Customize Icon Bar window, select the button to remove from the scroll box at the left, and then click the Delete button at the right side of the Customize Icon Bar window. The button should disappear. When finished, click the OK button to save your changes. You can also add a button to the icon bar for any screen currently displayed on screen within QuickBooks. To do this, open the window for which you want to add an icon bar button, and then select View, and then choose the Add Window Name to the Icon Bar command from the menu bar, where Window Name is the name of the currently opened window. In the dialog box that appears, set the label and icon you want to use for that Window's button in the icon bar. Then click the OK button to add it to the icon bar. This is a handy way to add buttons for frequently accessed screens to the icon bar as you are using them. Although you do not have to be fluent in accounting terminology to understand QuickBooks, it is necessary to have a basic understanding of some accounting concepts prior to entering information into the program. The first concept to discuss is the chart of accounts. A chart of accounts is a listing of all of the accounts used within your company file. You can open the chart of accounts by selecting Lists, then Chart of Accounts from the menu bar. Your chart of accounts shows the names of the accounts used by your company, the account type, like income or bank or one of the many other account types, and the current balance of the account. There is a column called Attach, which shows any attached documents associated with the account. You can double-click this column to open a dialog box that allows you to attach documents from your computer, from a scanner, or from the Doc Center for free. These attached files are stored locally on your computer in QuickBooks. You will now examine the general account types found within the chart of accounts and how they are organized. The chart of accounts has a default sorting method. Assets are listed at the top, followed by liabilities, and then equity. These accounts are also shown in the balance sheet report for your company. Following these accounts within the chart of accounts window are the income accounts, followed by the cost of goods and expense accounts. These accounts will appear within the profit and loss report. At the very bottom of the chart of accounts are accounts used for non-posting transactions like purchase orders and estimates. As mentioned before, at the top of the chart of accounts window, you will see the balance sheet accounts, which appear on the balance sheet for your company file. These accounts show what you own, your assets, what you owe to others, your liabilities, and the difference, which is your equity. Below those accounts, you'll find the income and expense accounts, which track where your money comes from and what it is spent on, respectively. Each balance sheet account has a register associated with it. Unlike the balance sheet accounts, the income and expense accounts each have a report that lists the transactions associated with that account. We will look at these types of accounts in more detail in later chapters, but we will now review a general list of the different types of accounts shown within the chart of accounts and whether they appear in the balance sheet or the profit and loss statement within QuickBooks. First, you have assets. Assets are what you own and what other people owe to you. More specifically, the money that people owe you is called your accounts receivable, or AR. Other assets may include checking account money, inventory, fixed assets like computers, and undeposited funds from customers. Also note that when you set up your company file in QuickBooks, although checking, savings, and petty cash are all company assets, you'll set them up as bank-type accounts in QuickBooks. The available types of accounts that are assets are bank, accounts receivable, fixed asset, other current asset, and other asset. Liabilities are what you owe to others. The unpaid bills that you have are specifically referred to as your accounts payable. A liability can be a loan, an unpaid bill, or taxes owed. Also note that when you set up your company file in QuickBooks, although credit cards are company liabilities, you'll set them up specifically as credit card type accounts in QuickBooks. The available types of accounts that are liabilities are credit card, accounts payable, other current liability, and long-term liability. Equity is the difference between what you have, your assets, and what you owe, your liabilities. The basic formula for calculating equity is assets less liabilities equals equity. Equity is seen as representing the health of your business. Equity can come from 3 different sources: investor money, current year profits, or retained earnings, which are profits from past years that haven't been distributed to shareholders. The only available type of account for equity is the equity account type. Now, the profit and loss accounts include the income accounts, which are used to track the income generated by your company, and the expense accounts, which are used to track where your company's money was spent. Once you begin your business, you need to decide which bookkeeping method to use, cash or accrual. This will determine the method used to report income and expenses on your tax forms. Please check with your accountant, tax advisor, or the IRS before choosing a bookkeeping method for tax purposes. It is important to note that when you create reports in QuickBooks, you can switch between the cash and accrual method at any time to see how it impacts report results, regardless of which bookkeeping method you have actually chosen for tax purposes. Also, regardless of how you decide to set up your reports, you always record the business transactions the same way in QuickBooks. A general description of the accounting methods is that when using the cash accounting method, you record your income when you actually receive the money, and you record expenses when you actually pay the bills. In accrual accounting, you record income at the time of sale, not when you actually receive payment. In the same way, you also record payments when you receive the bill or incur the expense, not whenever the bill is actually paid. You also need to know how to measure your business's profitability. 2 very important reports that assist you in figuring this out are the balance sheet and the profit and loss statement, also called an income statement. These are most often the reports that will be requested by banks and CPAs. Another commonly requested report is the statement of cash flows. Many people use this to determine the stability of your cash flow, meaning money coming in and going out of your business. This report shows money received and payments made during a specific accounting period. You can view the balance sheet by selecting Reports, then rolling down to Company and Financial, and then choosing the Balance Sheet Standard from the menu bar. A balance sheet shows a company's health on a given date. It shows what the company has, its assets, what it owes, its liabilities, and the net worth of the company, meaning its equity. The total assets always equals the total liabilities plus equity. It is this balance that must be maintained by using the principles of double entry accounting. You can view the profit and loss statement by selecting Reports, rolling down to Company and Financial, and then choosing Profit and Loss Standard from the menu bar. This report shows income, expenses, and the net profit or loss, meaning your income less your expenses. It summarizes the revenue and expenses of the company by category, first income and then expenses. You can view the statement of cash flows by selecting Reports, rolling down to Company and Financial, and then choosing the Statement of Cash Flows command from the menu bar. This shows the change in the company's cash position for a selected time period. It shows the amount of cash earned from profit, from where additional cash was received, and where the cash was spent. You can use the Express Start feature to create a new company file. This feature simplifies and segments the steps in the Easy Step interview into more manageable sections, so you can get started with QuickBooks more quickly. When you first open QuickBooks, the option to create a company file using the Express Start feature is displayed in the QuickBooks Setup screen. Note that this is the same screen that opens if you select File, then New Company from the menu bar, or simply click the Create a New Company button shown in the No Company Open window. If you wish to use the Express Start feature, then click the Start Setup button within the QuickBooks Setup screen to begin. Also note that for advanced features and setup, you can still use the Easy Step Interview to more thoroughly customize your company file at startup. To do this, simply click the Other Options drop-down button shown towards the bottom of the QuickBooks Setup screen instead. Then click the Advanced Setup command in the drop-down menu to use the Easy Step Interview, which we will discuss in a later lesson, to create your company file instead. In the first Express Start screen, enter your Intuit ID or the email address associated with your Intuit ID into the Enter Your Email Address field. You must be connected to the internet for this part of the company file setup. If you do not have an Intuit account, enter the business email address you want to associate with your Intuit account. The account will then be created during this part of the process. The Intuit account links you to apps and services available through Intuit. After you have entered your email address, click the Find button to continue. If you have an existing Intuit account, then enter the associated password for the account. If creating a new Intuit account, enter a new password for the account into the password field, and then re-enter it into the Confirm Password field. Also, if creating a new account, enter your first and last names into the two name fields shown. When you are ready to proceed, you can then click the Continue button. If you entered an invalid email, you may see an Encountered a Problem message box appear on screen that says there was a problem with Intuit's server. You can click the Skip option to skip the email address section and continue. If you genuinely made a mistake, however, you can click the Retry button to retry it, or click the Close button in the upper right corner of the message box to close it and double-check the data you entered. After completing the sign-in section, as shown by the progress meter in the upper right corner of the QuickBooks Setup window, you will arrive at the Add Info section. In this screen, enter your company's name as you wish it to appear to customers and vendors into the business name field. Next, click the Help Me Choose hyperlink next to the Industry field to open the Select Your Industry window. This window allows you to select your company file's industry. Your industry choice impacts which features of QuickBooks are enabled and disabled and determines the initial chart of accounts used by your company file. You can also change these settings later if needed. Scroll through the industry list in the lower left corner of this window until you find the industry type that most closely matches the type of business you operate, and then click the industry choice to select it. The chart of accounts for the selected type of industry will appear in the list to the right for you to review if desired. If you cannot find a specific industry match, you can select the General Product-Based Business or General Service-Based Business choices. You should only choose the Other/None option if you want to create all of the accounts used by your company file manually, by yourself, or with your accountant. After making an industry selection, click the OK button to return to the Express Start screen. Next, use the Business Type drop-down to select the legal structure of your company file. This determines the tax-related settings for your company file. Then enter your company's FEIN, meaning Federal Employer Identification Number, or your own individual Social Security number into the Tax ID field. Enter your business address into the Business Address fields. Enter the associated city, state, zip, and country into the City, State, Zip, and Country fields. Finally, enter the main business phone number into the Phone field. After completing the fields in this screen, click the Create Company button to continue. A working message box will momentarily appear at that point to show the progress of the program at creating your company file. When completed, the message box will disappear and you will see your new company file appear along with the Finish screen of the QuickBooks Setup window. If desired, you can click any of the Learn More buttons that are shown within the QuickBooks Setup window to learn more about the additional features shown. When you are ready to begin entering data into your new QuickBooks file, click the Start Working button within the QuickBooks Setup screen to close the window and begin using QuickBooks Pro. In QuickBooks, you can also use the Easy Step Interview to create a company file. You complete the Easy Step Interview by entering information into different screens shown within the interview. After entering information into a screen, you click the Next button to proceed to the next screen and repeat the process. After answering all questions within all screens, you can click the Go to Setup button to start using QuickBooks. Within the Easy Step interview, if questions arise that you must answer and you are unsure of the correct answer, don't worry. You can usually go back and change your answers later. In most screens, you can click the back button to return to a previous screen and change your answers. Also, if necessary, you can click the Leave button to exit the Easy Step interview. However, if you leave the Easy Step interview prior to actually saving your company file, your data entry up until that point will be lost. A message box will inform you if this is the case before you exit, so you need not worry about losing your data entry. If you are new to QuickBooks, you should consider creating a company file that is not your actual company file, but is similar in nature, a dummy company. That way you can practice creating transactions you would be likely to enter into your own company file without placing your own real company file data in jeopardy. You can create as many company files in QuickBooks as you would like. Also, if you set up a fake company file, it can be easier to train others in your company in the basic bookkeeping involved with the company without risking the integrity of your actual company's data file. Before entering data into the Easy Step interview, you need to gather some information. First and most importantly, you need to select a start date for your QuickBooks company file. The start date is the date as of which you will enter all of the balances in the accounts used by your company file. Because of this, you may want to pick a date that isn't too far in the past, since you need to record each transaction that has occurred from the start date through the current date to ensure that you create a company file that is both financially accurate and also ready for daily data entry. Many people choose the last day of the previous financial period, such as a quarter or month, as the start date. Remember, you have to enter all of the transactions that have occurred from the start date through the current date, or at least enter accurate journal entries representing those transaction values in order to use the company file and have accurate balances. So don't go too far into the past if you don't want to spend hours performing data entry. You also need to know the account balances of your checking, savings, and any other accounts within the company file as of the start date. This can often be found on a balance sheet created as of the start date. If that isn't available, bank statements as of the start date can also be used. You also need to have a Federal Employer Identification Number, or FEIN, or the Social Security number found on your company's tax returns. Once you have all of this information, you can start the Easy Step interview. To create a company file in QuickBooks, you can select File, then New Company from the menu bar, or you can click the Create a New Company button within the No Company Open dialog box that appears in QuickBooks when there is no company file opened to open the QuickBooks Setup window. Click the Other Options drop-down button in the QuickBooks Setup screen and then choose the Advanced Setup command in this drop-down menu to start the Easy Step interview. Within the Easy Step interview, you can see the interview progress meter at the left side of the screen. As you complete the screens in the Easy Step interview, your overall progress is reflected within this meter. In the first screen, labeled Enter Your Company Information, you enter information about your company. Required fields are noted by a red asterisk to the left of the field name. Begin by entering the name of your company into the Company Name field. Then move to the next field by pressing the Tab key on your keyboard or by clicking into the next field with your mouse. The next field is the Legal Name field. This is most often the same thing as your company name field, but can be different for DBA businesses. If you have a question about this field, you can click the Explain hyperlink to show an associated help file explaining this field's purpose in a new window. You can read this help file and close it when you are finished. This type of assistance is everywhere in the Easy Step interview and is found generally throughout the QuickBooks application. For example, you can click the Get Answers hyperlink in the upper right corner of any screen within the Easy Step interview to open an associated help file regarding the content that is entered into that particular screen. Once again, you can read this information and close it when you are finished. Help like this is woven throughout the program, so it is almost always available for any screen in QuickBooks. This is just another great aspect of using this program. Next, enter either your FEIN or Social Security number as appropriate into the Tax ID field. Then enter your complete street address into the Street Address field set. Enter your city into the City field. Then select the abbreviation for your state from the State drop-down menu. Next, enter your zip code into the Zip field. Select your country from the Country drop-down if necessary. Enter your phone number and fax number if desired into the phone and fax fields using the formatting you want displayed on your forms within QuickBooks, like invoices, for example. You can enter a default email address for the company into the Email Address field. You can also enter the website address of your company into the Website field if you would like. Once you have finished entering data into this screen, click the Next button to continue. In the next screen, titled Select Your Industry, select the type of company for which you are creating a company file from the listing of choices shown. The choice you make here determines which features are enabled and which default accounts are placed into your chart of accounts. You can always customize these features later, but selecting an industry from the list will typically reduce the amount of customization required. If your specific industry is not listed, either select the closest industry listed or select the General Product-Based Business or General Service-Based Business choices from the list of choices. An important point to note is that the answer you make here will change what questions the Easy Step interview will pose as you continue. So the questions posed to an individual who selects retail shop or online commerce will be different from an individual who selects church or religious organization. For example, setting up sales tax would be part of the Easy Step interview for the retail shop or online commerce selection, but not for the church or religious organization selection. After making your industry selection, click the Next button to continue. The next screen asks how your company is organized. Select the option button that corresponds to the legal structure of your company. This assists QuickBooks in choosing accounts for your company's chart of accounts and also in assigning accounts to tax form lines. Once you have made your selection, click the Next button to continue. In the next screen, you select the first month of your fiscal year from the drop-down menu shown. Your fiscal year is quite often the same as your tax year. A fiscal year is simply a 12-month period used for reporting a company's financial status. For many companies, the first month of the fiscal year is January. This allows them to have a fiscal year that coincides with the income tax year. Once you've selected the first month in your fiscal year, click the Next button to continue. In the next screen, titled Set Up Your Administrator Password, you can create a password for the administrator account of your company file. The administrator account has access to all of your company's financial information. This is an optional step, and you can create users and assign access privileges at any time. However, if you wish to create a password for the administrator account, you can enter it into both the administrator password and retype password fields. If you do this, make sure that you know what this password is. Also, note that passwords you create are case sensitive. When you're ready, click the Next button to continue. In the next screen, called Create Your Company File, you create the actual QuickBooks company file that you will use. This is when you decide what to name the company file and where you will save it. Note this information as you will most likely need it later. When you are ready to save the company file, you can click the Next button to continue. This will launch the File Name for New Company dialog box. This is a standard Windows Save As dialog box. Use it to select the folder into which you want to save the company file. After selecting where to save the company file, enter the name to give to the company file into the File Name field. This defaults to the company name entered into the first screen of the Easy Step interview, but you can change it if needed. After you know where you will save the file and what you will name it, click the Save button to save the company file and return to the Easy Step interview. The next screen you will see in the Easy Step interview is the Customizing QuickBooks for Your Business screen. This screen informs you that the next several screens will customize your QuickBooks company file by asking you questions about your company, your customers, and how you pay your bills. At this point and hereafter, you can click the Leave button in the lower left corner of the Easy Step interview screen to save your progress and return later to complete the Easy Step interview if needed. Once you are ready to continue, click the Next button. Next, for your industry selection, the Easy Step interview shows a series of screens that allows you to customize your company file for your industry type. Answer any questions posed in each screen, and then click the Next button to continue until you have finished customizing your company file. When you have finished answering all of the questions in the Easy Step interview, you will see the final congratulations screen. Click the Go to Setup button to open a window that instructs you to create your customers, inventory, and vendors. You can close this window when you're finished reviewing the next steps that you should take to complete setting up your company file. You can leave the Easy Step interview at any point after you have saved the company file by clicking the Leave button in the lower left corner of the Easy Step interview. When you return at a later point to continue filling out the Easy Step interview, which can be a lengthy process, just opening the company file will automatically return you to the point at which you left off in the Easy Step interview. However, once you have completed the Easy Step interview, you cannot return to the Easy Step interview again. From that point on, you can only change the default preferences of the program by selecting Edit and then Preferences from the menu bar, and then changing the settings shown in the Preferences dialog box. You should always back up your data to prevent data loss. You must be in single-user mode to do this. QuickBooks recommends you back up your files daily. That way, if the data in your company file becomes corrupted or lost, you can restore a copy of the file from a backup. To make your company file current again after restoring the file, you need to re-enter all the transactions from the date you created the backup file up to the current date. However, that is far less work than recreating the entire company file again. QuickBooks gives you the option to create both local and online backup copies of your company file. The online option lets you create backup copies of your company file on Intuit's servers. However, the online backup is a fee-based service you will need to purchase separately. Alternately, you can create free local backup copies within the software and simply store them off-site for added security if desired. To create a local backup copy of the currently opened company file in QuickBooks, select File, then Backup Company, then Create Local Backup from the menu bar to open the Create Backup window. The option button for Local Backup should already be selected within the initial screen. Click the Options button at the bottom of the screen to open the Backup Options window, where you can specify the settings of your local backup copy. In the Local Backup Only section, enter the pathway or folder directory where you want to save the backup copy. You can click the Browse button to open a Browse for Folder dialog box that allows you to visually select the location into which you want to save the backup copy. After you have selected the folder or drive where you want to save the backup copy within the Browse for Folder dialog box, you can then click the OK button to close the dialog box. Your selection will then appear within the Tell us where to save your backup copies required field. You can then check or uncheck either of the two checkbox options shown in the Local Backup Only section of the window if desired. The first checkbox, labeled Add the date and time of the backup to the file name Recommended, will add those elements to the copy of the backup file that is created so that you can tell when the copy was made. The second checkbox, labeled Limit the number of backup copies in this folder to, will limit the number of backup copies within the selected folder to a number that you enter. In the Online and Local Backup section, you can check the checkbox shown to set QuickBooks to remind you to create a backup copy after you close the company file a specified number of times if desired. You can also select the Option button that shows what type of data verification you want to perform on the information within the backup copy you create. This ensures that your backup copy is free from data corruption. Once you have made your choices in the Backup Options window, click the OK button to close the window and return to the Create Backup window. Then click the Next button to continue. In the next screen, choose when to create the local backup copy. To create a local backup copy immediately, select the Save It Now option button. To save a copy right now and also set a schedule for future backup times, select the Save It Now and Schedule Future Backup options button. To only schedule future backups, you would choose the Only Schedule Future Backups option button. After making a selection, click the Next button to continue. If you are saving a local backup copy right now, then QuickBooks will open the Save Backup Copy dialog box. Here you can change the file name or destination folder of the backup copy if desired. It defaults to saving it into the folder you selected earlier in the Backup Options window. When you're ready to create the local backup copy, click the Save button. Once QuickBooks has finished creating the local backup copy, it will display a small message box informing you of its success. You can then click the OK button within the message box to dismiss it. If you corrupt your company's data file and need to restore the data from a local backup copy, you can, as long as you created local backup copies. You must, however, be in single-user mode to do this. When you restore your company file, you overwrite your corrupted company data with the data that you saved when you created the local backup copy. You will then have to re-enter all transactions that occurred from the time and date that you created the backup copy up through the current day to bring your company file back up to date. To restore a corrupted company file from a backup copy, select File and then choose Open or Restore Company from the menu bar. In this situation, you want to restore your data from a backup copy, so select the Restore a Backup Copy option button. Then click the Next button to continue. The next window asks where the backup copy you want to use is saved. Select the Local Backup option button if using a local backup copy saved to your network or to removable media. If you saved the backup copy online using that feature, select the Online Backup option button instead. For this example, we will select the Local Backup option. After making your choice, click the Next button to continue. QuickBooks will next open the Open Backup Copy dialog box. Use this dialog box to navigate to and then select the local backup copy that you want to use for the restore process. Once you have selected the file to use, click the Open button within the Open Backup Copy dialog box to return to the Open or Restore Company window. The Open or Restore Company window will then display the Where do you want to restore this file screen. Note that you can also reach this screen in an alternate manner than the one described this far by simply choosing File, then Backup Company, then Restore Previous Local Backup from the menu bar, and then selecting the name of the desired local backup file to use from the side menu of choices that appears. Using this method also allows you to choose a local backup copy for the restore procedure from the menu bar and then jump immediately to this screen within the Open or Restore Company window. After reading the information within this screen, click the Next button to continue. You will next need to use the Save Company File As dialog box that appears to navigate to and then select the corrupted company file to overwrite with information from the backup copy you just selected. After selecting the company file to overwrite, click the Save button to continue. If you are overwriting a corrupted company file, QuickBooks may ask you if you wish to overwrite the file. You can click Yes in the message box that appears to overwrite the selected file. Next, QuickBooks cautions you to be absolutely sure that you want to do this by making you type the word Yes into the text box within the Delete Entire File window, since you will likely be deleting the most current copy of your company file. You can type the word Yes into the box and then click the OK button to begin overwriting the corrupted company file with the data from your selected backup file. After QuickBooks has successfully restored the company file, it informs you of that fact in a message box. Click the OK button in the message box to finish. Then re-enter any transactions into the company file from the time the backup copy was created until the current day to make the company file current again. QuickBooks lets you create user accounts and passwords for the individuals that will access your company file. You can decide which types of activities users can perform and what areas of the application they can access. You can set up users by selecting Company, then Set up Users and Passwords, then Set up Users from the menu bar. That will open the User List dialog box. First, you will need to create a master user, usually called admin, that can access all of the areas of QuickBooks. That user account can then create the other user accounts. You typically create the admin user during the Easy Step interview. That is then the default user account for all activities until you create more user accounts. To add a new user after you are logged in as the admin user, click the Add User button in the User List dialog box to open the Set up User Access and Password wizard. Type the username for the new user into the username field and type a password for the user into the password field. Reconfirm the password you just typed by typing it again in the Confirm Password field and then click the Next button to continue. Note that to add the new user to your existing QuickBooks license, check the Add this user to my QuickBooks license checkbox. You must purchase a license for each concurrent QuickBooks user. On the next screen, you can set the user's access to all areas of QuickBooks, selected areas of QuickBooks, or external accountant. If you choose either all areas of QuickBooks or external accountant, you will need to click either yes or no in the confirmation prompt window that appears when you click the Next button to continue. You then simply click the Finish button in the next screen to finish setting up those two types of users. However, if you selected the Selected Areas of QuickBooks option button, you will see the Sales and Accounts Receivable screen appear when you click the Next button to proceed. Select the option button that corresponds to the type of access to give the user to Sales and Accounts Receivable, and then click the Next button to continue. In the Purchases and Accounts Payable screen, select the option that corresponds to the type of access to give the user to Purchases and Accounts Payable, and click the Next button to continue. In the checking and credit card screen, select the option that corresponds to the type of access to give the user to checking and credit cards in the company file, and click the Next button to continue. If inventory is enabled, then in the inventory screen that appears, select the option that corresponds to the access to give the user to inventory, and click Next to continue. If time tracking is enabled, then in the time tracking screen that appears, select the option that corresponds to the type of access to give the user to time tracking, and click Next to continue. If payroll is enabled, then in the Payroll and Employees screen, select the option that corresponds to the type of access to give this user to Payroll and Employees, and click Next to continue. In the Sensitive Accounting Activities screen, you would select the option that corresponds to the type of access to give the user to Sensitive Accounting Activities, and then click the Next button to continue. In the Sensitive Financial Reporting section, you can then select the option that corresponds to the type of access to give this user to Sensitive Financial Reporting, and click Next to continue. In the Changing or Deleting Transactions screen, select whether to allow this user the ability to change or delete transactions by setting the desired options and then clicking the Next button to continue. You can then review the permissions you set for this user in the final screen and click the Finish button to add that user to the user list. You can also select a user from the user list and then click the Edit User button to change the security settings for the selected user by stepping through the same set of screens you used to initially set the user's permissions. You can also select a user in the user list and click the Delete User button to delete the user account. You will need to click the Yes button in the warning message box that appears to delete the selected user account permanently. When you are finished with the user list dialog box, you can click the Close button within it to close it. Some activities, like creating a backup file or restoring a company file, require that you open QuickBooks in single user mode. You must make sure all other users of the application are logged off before you switch user modes. To have multiple users accessing the same QuickBooks data file, you can switch to multi-user mode. However, QuickBooks must be set up to allow multi-user access before you can switch user modes. If you try to switch to multi-user mode before you have configured QuickBooks to allow for multi-user mode, QuickBooks will helpfully prompt you to set up QuickBooks for multi-user access. After you have configured QuickBooks to allow multi-user access, you can then switch between single-user and multi-user modes. When in multi-user mode, you must enter your username and password to open and access the company file on the shared computer. To switch user modes after you have multiple users enabled, select File and then choose Switch to Multi-User Mode, or choose File and then switch to Single User Mode from the menu bar. This is a toggle command and will always switch to the opposite command from the user mode in which you are currently operating. To close your company file, select File and then Close Company from the menu bar. Doing this will leave the QuickBooks application open so that you may open up another company file if you would like. To open a company file in QuickBooks, you can select File and then choose Open or Restore Company from the menu bar. Alternately, if the No Company Open dialog box is showing on screen, you can click the Open or Restore an Existing Company button to launch the same dialog box. Either way, in the Open or Restore Company dialog box that appears, select the Open a Company File option button and then click the Next button to launch the Open a Company dialog box. Use this dialog box to navigate to the folder in your computer that contains the company file that you want to open. Then double-click the company file, or click it once to select it and then click the Open button in the lower right corner of the dialog box to open the selected company file. In QuickBooks, you store much of the information for your company file in lists. In QuickBooks, you keep lists for all of your vendors, customers, inventory items, and accounts. They are there so you will not need to retype information you use frequently every time you want to place it into a form. You also don't need to enter all of your information into the lists at startup. You can add information into all of your lists as you use QuickBooks. In this chapter, we will cover manipulating the main lists you will need to run QuickBooks efficiently. These include the chart of accounts, the customers and jobs list, the employees list, and the vendors list. These lists, with the exception of the chart of accounts, are maintained within the related center in QuickBooks. So, for example, you can open the Customer Center to access the Customers and Jobs list. The lists within the centers also share a similar layout and structure, so after you have learned how to perform list-related tasks in one of the centers, you will be able to quickly master using the lists in the other centers as well. One of the most important lists in QuickBooks is the Chart of Accounts. You can open this list by selecting Lists, then Chart of Accounts from the menu bar. The Chart of Accounts lists all of the accounts within your company file. These accounts track all incoming and outgoing money and tell you how much you currently own and owe. When you set up your business in QuickBooks, you get a default list of accounts. Once that has been done, you will probably need to make some changes. You can add, edit, inactivate, delete, and rename accounts in this list. Generally, you can perform any of these tasks by first selecting the account within the Chart of Accounts that you want to change, then click the Account button in the lower left corner of the Chart of Accounts window, and then select the desired command to perform from the pop-up menu that appears. Conveniently, in any of the lists that you can access by choosing the Lists command in the menu bar, you can rely on being able to click the button in the lower left corner of the list window to perform the basic list-related tasks. This button is always named the same thing as the list within which it appears. For example, the Account button is the one to click to perform list management in the Chart of Accounts window, the Item button is the one to click when using the item list, and so on. To illustrate, assume that you wanted to add a new savings account into your Chart of Accounts. To add a new account, you would select Lists and then Chart of Accounts from the menu bar, or press Ctrl+A on your keyboard to open the list. Next, click the Account button in the lower left corner of the Chart of Accounts window and choose the New command from the pop-up menu that appears. This opens the Add New Account, Choose Account Type window where you enter the new account information. First, select the account type from the account option shown. Technically, a savings account is an asset. However, in QuickBooks, when working with asset accounts that have a cash basis, like checking, savings, petty cash, and others, you will want to assign the account as a bank account type to note its cash nature and be able to use it within transaction windows. After selecting the desired account type, click the Continue button to move to the next screen. You will then see the Add New Account window. Note that when you selected the account type on the previous screen and then clicked the Continue button, all it really did was select an account type from the Account Type drop-down shown at the top of this window. Next, you need to enter a name for the account into the Account Name text box. For now, skip the Sub-Account of checkbox and drop-down, as we will discuss creating sub-accounts momentarily, and we will assume that the account created is not a sub-account of any other main account. The account description field is optional, as are the bank account number, routing number, and tax line mapping fields. When finished, click the Save and Close button to create the new account and close the new account window. Alternately, you may continue creating new accounts without having to close and reopen the new account window by clicking the Save and New button instead. Doing this will create the account and clear the new account window, but leave the window open so that you can continue creating accounts. If you choose to do this, note that this time you will need to select the account type for the next account to create from the Account Type drop-down at the top of the window. Also note that you can click the Cancel button if needed to close the new account window without creating an account. To create an account that had a balance as of the start date of your company file, click the Enter Opening Balance button. This will open the Enter Opening Balance window where you can enter the amount as of the start date of your company file into the Statement Ending Balance field. Then select the statement date, which must be either before or as of the start date of the company file, from the Statement Ending Date Calendar selector. Then click the OK button to save the account's opening balance. The amounts entered here are attributed to the Opening Bal Equity account in the Chart of Accounts. For accounts that are created after the start date, you simply create the account and then enter the transactions that show from where the new account received its initial funds. When creating accounts, you will not need to use the opening balance field again after entering your beginning account balances when starting your company file. You can also create sub-accounts of accounts already created within the Chart of Accounts. This allows you to attribute transaction amounts to specific sub-accounts of a primary account for reporting purposes. For example, if you had an automobile expense account, You could create sub-accounts for gas and maintenance or repairs to easily show within a report the different amounts spent on gas versus repairs and maintenance for company vehicles, as well as show the total amount spent on automobile expenses. The balance of any main account that has sub-accounts is the total of all transactions attributed to the main account, including all balances within its sub-accounts. You create a sub-account in the same way you create any other account within the chart of accounts. However, first ensure that you have created the main account for which you want to create a sub-account. The only difference when creating a sub-account versus a primary account is that you must check the Sub-Account Of box and then choose its primary account from the adjacent drop-down menu. Sub-accounts must also be of the exact same account type as their parent accounts. To edit an account, select the account to edit within the chart of accounts. Then click the Account button in the lower left corner of the list and choose the Edit Account command from the pop-up menu that appears. Alternately, you can also right-click on the account to edit within the chart of accounts window and then select the Edit Account command from the pop-up menu that appears. Either way, you will then see the Edit Account window appear. Edit the account information in this window, and then click the Save and Close button to save your changes and close the window. You may have accounts you never use listed in your chart of accounts. If you have an account that you would like to delete within your chart of accounts, you may do so only if there are no transactions associated with the account. After there are transactions assigned to an account, you can no longer delete it, as that would compromise your company's financial information. In that case, you would need to remove the transactions from the account, either by reassigning each transaction in the account to other accounts or by deleting them entirely if they're incorrect. However, this may not be feasible for your situation. After there are no transactions in an account, then you can delete it. To delete an empty account in the chart of accounts, you would select the account, then click the Account button in the lower left corner of the chart of accounts window and choose the Delete Account command from the pop-up menu. After selecting the Delete command, you will need to click the OK button in the message box that appears to permanently delete the account. If you have an account you used at one time in the past, but no longer actively use, you can inactivate it to hide it since you cannot delete it. When an account is inactivated, it will not appear by default in your chart of accounts. However, the account information is retained for reporting in QuickBooks. You can actually make items in almost all of your lists inactive to hide items you no longer use. In the chart of accounts, you can inactivate an account by selecting the name of the account, clicking the Account button in the lower left corner of the list window, and then choosing the Make Account Inactive command from the pop-up menu. Inactivating list items will be covered in depth in Lesson 3.8. You can perform all activities associated with your customers through the Customer Center. While there are many features available in the Customer Center, one of the most important parts of it is the Customers and Jobs list. This list is where you can add, edit, and display all of your customers' information, as well as information for any jobs that you create for each customer if you use the Jobs features in QuickBooks. You may notice that this list is called the Customers and Jobs tab within the Customer Center and called the Customer Job List within Forms. Sometimes it is simply called the Customers List. It really doesn't matter what you call it as long as you realize that it's all the same list within QuickBooks. If you have created a new company file in QuickBooks and have customers who owed you money as of the start date of your company file, then enter those people into the Customers and Jobs list right after you finish creating the company file. After you have done that, you can then add customers and jobs to the list as the need arises through the daily use of the program. To add a new customer to the Customers and Jobs list, you need to first open the Customer Center. You can do this by clicking the Customers button that appears in the icon bar, or by clicking the Customers button in the home page, or by selecting Customers and then Customer Center from the menu bar. You can also use the keyboard shortcut of Ctrl+J to open the Customer Center and display the Customers and Jobs tab. At the left side of the Customer Center window is a tab called Customers and Jobs. Click this tab to view customers and jobs entered into the QuickBooks program. To add a new customer to this list, click the New Customer and Job button that appears above the Customers and Jobs tab at the top of the Customer Center window. From the small drop-down menu that appears, click the New Customer choice. This will open the New Customer window where you can enter the new customer information. In the New Customer window, type the name of the customer as you would like it to appear within the Customers and Jobs tab into the Customer Name field. Each customer must have a unique customer name value. If adding a customer who owed you money as of the start date of your company file, enter the amount owed by the customer as of the start date into the Opening Balance field. Then select the start date of your company file from the As Of calendar dropdown. These fields are only used when adding customers who owed you money as of your start date. For any future customers you add, you simply skip these Opening Balance fields. Next, click the Address Info tab at the left side of the window if needed. In this tab, you enter the customer address information as you would like it to appear on invoices and other customer-related documentation. Start by typing the name of the company, which can be different from the customer name value, into the company name field. For individual customers, enter their name into the Mr. Ms., first, middle initial, and last name fields. Enter the customer's job title into the job title field. Then enter the customer contact information you wish to record into the next 8 fields available. There are 8 data field choices shown by default. However, for each field, you can select what data to record by choosing the name of a data field from the drop-down field labels shown. Then record the associated customer information within the adjacent data field to the right of each drop-down field label. The data fields shown by default from top to bottom and left to right are main phone, work phone, mobile, fax, main email, CC email, website, and other one. Your choices of alternate fields for which you can substitute the default information are home phone, alt mobile, alt fax, alt email 1, alt email 2, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, URL 1, URL 2, URL 3, URL 4, Skype ID, other 2, and other 3. In the Address Details section at the bottom of this tab, you can enter billing and shipping address information for the customer. Type the customer's billing address directly into the Invoice or Bill To text box, or click the Edit button to the right of the Invoice or Bill To field, and then enter the billing address into the fields within the Edit Address Information window that appears. If you choose to enter the address information into the Edit Address Information window, click the OK button when finished to display the address you entered within the Invoice or Bill To text box. If the shipping address is the same as the billing address you entered, click the Copy button to copy the billing address into the Ship To text box to the right. If they are not the same, then simply enter the shipping address into the Ship To text box. In QuickBooks, you can create and save multiple shipping addresses for each customer. You can add a shipping address by clicking the Add button to the right of the Ship To text box. In the Add Shipping Address Information dialog box that appears, enter a name for the shipping address into the Address Name field. Then type the address into the address, city, state province, zip postal code, and country region fields. If creating multiple addresses, check the Default Shipping Address checkbox of the address you want to set as the default shipping address. To save the address, click the OK button. You can add more shipping addresses by repeating the process until you have entered all of the necessary shipping addresses for the customer. Also note that you can select a shipping address from the Ship To drop-down to display it within the address field on this tab. You can then use the Edit and Delete buttons that appear to the right of the displayed shipping address to edit or delete the shipping address information shown if needed. To continue entering customer information, click the Payment Settings tab at the left side of the New Customer window. On this tab, enter the default payment information for the customer. You can enter the account number you have assigned to this customer if you use account numbers by typing it into the account number field. To assign a credit limit to this customer, enter their credit limit amount into the Credit Limit field. Next, use the Payment Terms drop-down field to select the default purchasing terms you want to assign to this customer. If the customer has a special pricing level assigned to their purchases by default, select it from the Price Level drop-down field. If you think you will need to use pricing levels, please review the separate chapter on price levels. You can select a default delivery method for customer forms from the Preferred Delivery Method drop-down. If the customer has a preferred payment method that they use, you can select the name of the payment method from the Preferred Payment Method dropdown. If you accept online payments, you can check the methods of online payments you accept within the Online Payments section. The checkbox choices include credit card and bank transfer or ACH. If you process payments from a customer credit card, you can enter the customer's cardholder information into the credit card number, expiration date, name on card, address, and zip code fields within the credit card information section. Once you have finished information entry on this tab, click the Sales Tax Settings tab at the left side of the New Customer window to continue. On this tab, use the Tax Code dropdown to choose whether the selected customer is taxable or non-taxable. If the customer is a taxable customer, then choose the default sales tax to apply to their purchases from the Tax Item dropdown. We will be looking at collecting sales tax in a separate chapter, which you should review if you will be collecting sales tax. If the customer has a resale number for use, you can enter it into the Resale Number text box. After entering the customer's sales tax information, click the Additional Info tab at the left side of the New Customer window to continue. On this tab, you can enter a customer type into the Customer Type field or select a previous entry you have made from the field's drop-down list. The values you enter into this field can be used as a way to filter customer reports you create. You can use the Rep drop-down to assign one of your sales reps to the customer. In the area to the right of this tab, you can enter any information into the customer's custom fields that you have created. We will examine creating custom fields for customers, vendors, and employees in Lesson 3.6. If creating a new customer, you are finished with data entry at this point. You won't use the Job Info tab, as that is only used when creating a new job for an existing customer. We will examine creating jobs in the chapter on estimates. To finish adding the customer to the Customers and Jobs list, click the OK button. You can edit an existing customer's information in the future if their information changes or if you need to enter additional customer data. To edit a customer within the Customers and Jobs tab, select the name of the customer in the list whose information you wish to edit. Then either double-click the name of the customer in the Customers and Jobs tab, click the Edit button at the right end of the Customer Information section to the right, or simply right-click the customer name in the Customers and Jobs tab and select the Edit Customer Job command from the pop-up menu that appears. Performing any of these actions will open the Edit Customer window. You can then edit any of the information shown in the tabs within this window, and then click the OK button to save your changes and close the window when you are finished. Like accounts, after you have used a customer in a transaction, you cannot delete them from the Customers and Jobs tab. Instead, you can inactivate customers you will no longer need to view to hide them within the list. Please review Lesson 3.8 to learn how to activate and inactivate customers. If you did, however, create a customer record you did not use and no longer need, you can delete it. To do this, select the entry to Delete from the Customers and Jobs list and then choose Edit, then Delete Customer Job from the menu bar. You then need to click the OK button in the confirmation message box that appears to permanently delete the selected customer entry. If you are using QuickBooks to handle payroll and indicated that you have employees during the Easy Step interview, you can later set up payroll for your company file and then enter employees into the Employees tab within the Employee Center. The Employee Center allows you to handle all transactions that involve your employees in payroll. You can open the Employee Center by selecting Employees, then Employee Center from the menu bar. To view the Employees tab within the center, click the tab at the left side of the window that says Employees. You can add, edit, and delete or inactivate employees in the list. To add a new employee to the list, click the New Employee button in the upper left corner of the Employee Center. This will open the New Employee window. The information within this window is divided into tabs shown at the left side of the window. The first tab shown by default when you open this window is called the Personal tab. In this tab, enter the employee's name into the legal name fields. Then enter their name as it should appear on paychecks into the Print on Checks As field. Enter their Social Security number into the Social Security number field. You can enter their gender, date of birth, marital status, U.S. citizenship status, and ethnicity into the gender, date of birth, marital status, U.S. citizen, and ethnicity fields that are provided. If needed, you can also enter information into the Disability, I-9 form, and Military sections at the right side of this tab. After finishing data entry on this tab, click the Address and Contact tab to continue. In the Address and Contact tab, you can enter the employee's home address information into the address, city, state, and zip fields available. You can then enter their main phone number into the main phone field. Then enter their primary email address into the main email field. You can then enter the employee information that you wish to record into the next 6 fields available. There are 6 data fields shown by default. However, for each field, you can select what data to record by choosing the name of a data field from the drop-down field labels shown. Then record the associated employee information within the adjacent data field to the right of each drop-down field label. The data fields shown by default are, from top to bottom and left to right, work phone, mobile, fax, CC email, website, and other one. Your choices of alternate fields for which you can substitute the default information are home phone, alt mobile, alt fax, alt email 1, alt email 2, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, URL 1, URL 2, URL 3, URL 4, Skype ID, other 2, and other 3. After entering any employee information you wish to record, click the Additional Info tab to continue. In the Additional Info tab, you can enter an employee ID number into the Account Number Employee ID field if needed. You can also enter any information into whatever custom fields you create for your employees into the Custom Fields section of this tab. To add custom fields to your customer, vendor, or employee lists to record information of your choosing, please review the section on creating customized fields in a later lesson of this chapter. After you have finished the Additional Info tab, click the Payroll Info tab to continue. On the Payroll Info tab, enter the specific payroll earnings for the selected employee. We will discuss entering information into the Payroll Info and Workers' Comp tabs in depth in a later chapter on payroll. If you will be performing payroll activities in QuickBooks, you should review the entire chapter on payroll before entering employee payroll data. Also note that if you start to create a new employee but don't enter their payroll information, you will be prompted by QuickBooks to enter that information when you click the OK button within the New Employee window to save the record and close the window. To save the record as is, click the Leave As Is button within the prompt window. To return and enter your payroll information immediately, click the Set Up Now button and then enter the payroll data. Next, click the Employment Info tab. Here you enter the employee's hire date into the Hire Date field. You can enter the employee's original hire date if needed into the Original Hire Date field. If needed, you can enter an adjusted service date for the employee into the Adjusted Service Date field. An adjusted service date can be used to calculate benefits that differ from the employee's hire date. When the employee leaves, enter their last payroll date into the Release Date Last Date on Payroll field. Note, however, that this field is automatically filled in when you create a termination check for an employee during payroll. In the Employment Details section, you can use the Employment Type drop-down to classify the employee as a regular or W-2 employee, a statutory or 1099 employee, or an officer or owner of the company. You can also use the full or part-time, exempt, and key employee drop-downs to select whether the employee is full or part-time, whether or not they are exempt, and whether or not they are considered a key employee. In the Job Details section, you can enter job-related details about the employee if desired, including their title, supervisor, department, description, and target bonus. You can click the Workers' Comp tab to enter workers' compensation rates into the fields within this tab. Once again, please review the payroll chapter to learn how to enter information in this tab in detail. After you have entered the employee information, click the OK button within the New Employee window to add the selected employee into the employee list within the Employee Center. To edit an employee record in the future, to change employee or payroll information, select the name of the employee to edit from the Employees tab in the Employee Center. Then either click the Edit button shown at the right end of the Employee Information section to the right of the list, or double-click the name of the employee shown in the Employees tab to open the Edit Employee window. Change or add whatever employee or payroll information is necessary through the tabs within this window, and be sure to click the OK button when finished to save the data entry. Like all the other QuickBooks lists, you cannot delete an entry made in the employees list once it has been used in a transaction. Once a record is associated with the transaction, you can only inactivate the record to hide it from view. You should review Lesson 3.8 on inactivating and reactivating list items to learn how to perform this task in your QuickBooks lists. However, if you created an employee record but did not use it in any transactions, you can delete the record from the Employee tab. To do this, select the record to delete from the employee list and then choose Edit and then Delete Employee from the menu bar. You then need to click OK in the confirmation message box that appears to permanently delete the selected employee record. You keep information about the companies and people from whom you purchase goods or services in the Vendors tab within the Vendor Center. In QuickBooks, you keep part supply vendors, utility companies, subcontractors, and more within this list. The list of vendors tends to be one of the larger lists you maintain. QuickBooks uses the information you enter to fill out purchase orders, bills, and checks as you make purchases for your company. You can open the Vendor Center by selecting Vendors and then Vendor Center from the menu bar. To access the Vendors tab within the Vendor Center, click the Vendors tab at the left side of the Vendor Center window. You can add vendors, edit vendor information, and inactivate or delete vendors within this tab. To add a new vendor to the tab, click the New Vendor button in the upper left corner of the Vendor Center, and then select the New Vendor command from the drop-down menu to open the New Vendor window. Start by typing a unique name for this vendor into the vendor name field. If adding a vendor to whom you owed money as of the start date of your company file, enter the total amount outstanding into the opening balance field and select your company file's start date from the adjacent As of Calendar selector field. You only perform this task when initially adding vendors to whom you owed money as of the start date of your company file. If creating a vendor to whom you did not owe money as of your company file start date, skip the opening balance and the As of fields. Next, click the Address Info tab in the New Vendor window. Enter the company name of the vendor into the company name field. If the vendor is an individual, enter the person's information into the Mr. Ms., first, middle initial, and last name fields. Enter the vendor's job title into the job title field. Then enter the vendor contact information you wish to record into the next 8 fields that are available. There are 8 data field choices shown by default. However, for each field, you can select what data to record by choosing the name of a data field from the drop-down field labels shown. Then record the associated vendor information within the adjacent data field to the right of each drop-down field label. The data fields shown by default are, from top to bottom and left to right, main phone, work phone, mobile, fax, main email, CC email, website, and other 1. Your choices of alternate fields for which you can substitute the default information are home phone, alt mobile, alt fax, alt email 1, alt email 2, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, URL 1, URL 2, URL 3, URL 4, Skype ID, other 2, and other 3. In the address details section at the bottom of this tab, you can enter billed from and shipped from address information for the vendor. You can type the vendor's billing address directly into the Billed From field, or click the Edit button to the right of the Billed From field and enter the billing address into the fields within the Edit Address Information window that appears. If you enter the address information into the Edit Address Information window, click the OK button when finished to display the address you entered within the Billed From field. If the Shipped From address is the same as the Billed From address you entered, click the Copy button to copy the billing information into the Shipped From field to the right. If they are not the same, enter the shipping address into the Shipped From field. To continue entering vendor information, click the Payment Settings tab at the left side of the New Vendor window. On this tab, enter the default purchasing information from the vendor. You can enter the account number assigned by this vendor, if the vendor gives you an account number, by entering it into the account number field. This number will print in the memo field of checks that you remit to this vendor. If the vendor assigns you a credit limit, enter your credit limit amount into the credit limit field. Next, use the Payment Terms drop-down field to select the default purchasing terms you have been assigned by this vendor. You can enter the name of the vendor as you want it to appear on checks you issue to the vendor into the Print Name on Checks As field. After entering the vendor's payment information on this tab, click the Tax Settings tab to continue. On this tab, you can enter the vendor's tax ID number for 1099 subcontractors into the Vendor Tax ID field. If the vendor is eligible for a 1099, check the Vendor Eligible for 1099 checkbox. After entering any vendor tax information, click the Account Settings tab to continue. On the Account Settings tab, you can enter vendor account pre-fill information. You can enter up to 3 accounts, most commonly expense or cost of goods accounts, that can appear automatically when you enter a bill for this vendor. These accounts will appear within the Accounts column in the bill if you select this vendor record when entering a bill. This can save time if you always attribute amounts from a particular vendor to the same accounts. For example, if entering your telephone company as a vendor, you could select the telephone expense account from the first drop-down on this tab to have that account automatically appear when entering a bill from this vendor in the future. After entering any account pre-fill information for the vendor, click the Additional Info tab to continue. On the Additional Info tab, you can use the Vendor Type drop-down to select a vendor type, or you can enter a new vendor type directly into the Vendor Type field. This allows you to classify and categorize vendors for reporting purposes. At the right side of the Additional Info tab, you can enter any custom field values for custom fields you have created for your vendors. We will cover creating custom fields for your QuickBooks lists in a separate lesson of this chapter. After you have finished entering the vendor information, click the OK button to save the new vendor record and close the window. To cancel the creation of the vendor record instead, you can click the Cancel button to cancel your changes and close the window. To edit existing vendor records, to add missing information, or otherwise change the vendor records, first select the name of the vendor to change within the Vendors tab in the Vendor Center. Then either double-click the name shown in the list, or click the Edit button that appears at the right of the Vendor Information section to the right of the Vendors list to open the Edit Vendor window. Make whatever changes are needed in the tabs shown in this window and click the OK button to save the record. Like all QuickBooks lists, you cannot delete a record once you have used it in a transaction. After a record is associated with a transaction, you can only inactivate the record to hide it from view. You should review Lesson 3.8, Inactivating and Reactivating List Items, to learn how to perform this task in your QuickBooks lists. However, if you created a vendor record but did not use it in any transactions, you can delete the record from the vendor's list. To do this, select the record to delete from the list, and then choose Edit, and then Delete Vendor from the menu bar. You will need to click OK in the confirmation message box that appears to permanently delete the selected record. You can add your own customized fields to the customers and jobs, vendors, employees, and item lists in QuickBooks. This allows you to create fields that will appear for each record in a list and lets you track information specific to your particular business. For example, you could add fields for color, size, and style to your item list to create items with the same general description in your inventory, and then differentiate between them by color, size, and style. If you add custom fields to sales forms or purchase orders, QuickBooks will automatically enter the values specified for the employee, customer, vendor, or item you selected if a value was entered. This doesn't mean that you are required to use customized fields and forms, however. You could simply add a custom field as a way to record information strictly for your own use. For example, recording your opinion of a customer's creditworthiness. However you choose to use it, QuickBooks will remember the information you enter into the customized fields when you import and export data, and also when you memorize transactions. You can add up to 7 customized fields to each of the following lists: customers and jobs, vendors, and employees. You can only create up to 5 customized fields within the item list. Custom fields you add to a list are available to every record within the list. You can create custom fields that can appear in the customers and jobs, vendors, and employees lists by opening any one of the 3 lists, and then opening either the New List Item or Edit List Item windows within the selected list. Within the window, click the Additional Info tab, and then click the Define Fields button at the right side of the tab in the Custom Fields section. This will open a Set Up Custom Fields for Names dialog box where you can create custom fields for all 3 lists at once. To add a new custom field to a list, click into the first blank row in the Label column at the left side of the dialog box, and then type the label for the new field. To the right of that, check the checkbox for each list, shown as a column of checkboxes, within which you would like this field to appear. A field can appear within 1 or more lists. Repeat these steps until you have created all of the necessary custom fields for the 3 lists. After you are finished, click the OK button to save your changes and return to the selected List Item window. You can then input data into the custom field for new list entries or edit existing list items to add new data to the custom fields you just created. Custom fields are always shown on the Additional Info tab of both the New and Edit windows within the Customers and Jobs, Vendors, and Employees lists. Adding custom fields to the item list is a bit different from adding custom fields to the other lists. While we haven't examined working with the item list in much detail yet, it is an important list in QuickBooks. You place any item that appears in a QuickBooks purchase order, sales receipt, or invoice into the item list. You can access the item list by selecting Lists, then Item List from the menu bar. In the item list, you can add custom fields through either the New Item or Edit Item windows. Select either the New or Edit Item commands from the Item button in the lower left corner of the list to access either window. Once there, you can add custom fields to this list by clicking the Custom Fields button at the right side of the window. This will open a Custom Fields for Items dialog box where you can enter values for any custom fields you create for your item list. To create a new custom field for the item list, click the Define Fields button to open the Set Up Custom Fields for Items dialog box. Type a label for the new custom field into the first available blank row under the label column, and then check the adjacent Use checkbox for that row. Repeat this process until you have created all of the fields that you want within your item list. When finished, click the OK button to create the new fields. You can then enter values into the custom fields for the current item if needed. Click the OK button again in this window to return to the main item window when finished, and then click the OK button again to save the record. You can sort information in QuickBooks lists manually or automatically. To manually sort items within a list, click and drag the small diamond at the left side of any list entry and drop it into a new location within the list. However, it is important to note you cannot manually arrange list items when automatic sorting is applied to a list. Also, be careful when manually arranging items, as you may accidentally place sub-entries in a list, like sub-accounts in the chart of accounts or jobs within the Customers and Jobs list, under an incorrect main account. The only way to fix this is to manually place it back from where it came. You cannot automatically resort the list to fix that type of mistake. Also, when manually arranging list items in the chart of accounts, you can only arrange accounts adjacent to accounts of the same account type. For example, you cannot place an income account into the expense accounts within the list. You can also automatically sort list items in ascending or descending order by the values shown in any column within the list. To do this, click the column heading at the top of the column by whose values you wish to sort the list. You will see a small arrow appear next to the column heading pointing either up or down. An up arrow indicates an ascending sort order, and the down arrow indicates a descending sort order. Clicking the name of the column shown in the column heading again will toggle the arrow between the up and down positions. When you automatically sort a list, a large diamond appears at the far left side of the row of column headings. This indicates the list is being automatically sorted. You won't be able to perform some actions, like manually arranging list items, while automatic sorting is being applied. To remove automatic sorting and return the list to its default sorting order, click the large diamond to remove the automatic sorting. To resort a list and return it to its original sorting order, click the button that contains the name of the list in the lower left corner of the list window, and then select the Resort List command from the pop-up menu that appears. For lists that appear within the centers, however, you must resort the lists using a different method. In these lists, select an entry within the list, and then select View, and then Resort List from the menu bar to return the list to its original sort order. In QuickBooks Lists, you can only delete list items if you have not used them in any transactions. If you try to delete a list item that has been used in a transaction, QuickBooks will warn you that the item cannot be deleted. If you don't want to use a list item but you can't delete it, you can make it inactive instead to hide its display by default within the list. To inactivate an item in any QuickBooks list, right-click the list item you want to make inactive within the desired list. From the pop-up menu that appears, select the Make List Item Type Inactive command to inactivate the selected list item and hide its display. To see inactive list items within a list, check the Include Inactive checkbox at the bottom of the list window. You will be able to use this method to view inactive list entries in any list except the customers and jobs, vendors, and employees lists. In these lists, you can view all items by using the View drop-down that appears within the tab and above the list to select the All Item Type command. After you do this, you will see a new column appear at the left side of the list showing inactive items, which appear with an X next to their names. You can click any of these X symbols to make that particular list item active again. To print a list, open the list to print and click the button in the lower left corner of the list. From the pop-up menu that appears, select Print List. If, however, you are trying to print either the customers and jobs, vendors, or employee lists, then instead click the Print button in the toolbar at the top of the respective center and choose the name of the list from the drop-down menu that appears. Next, click the OK button to bypass the List Reports message, and then set your printing settings in the dialog box that appears. Finally, click the Print button to print the list. Although there is no specific rename command within the QuickBooks lists to rename a list item, you simply open the Edit List Item window for the selected item from the desired list. Then type a new name for the entry into the name field at the very top of the window, and the entry will adopt the new name after you click the OK or Save and Close buttons to save your changes. When renaming list items, if you name an entry the exact same thing as another existing entry, QuickBooks will ask if you wish to merge the two items into one item. If you do, click the Yes button at the Merge prompt, and QuickBooks will make a single entry from the two entries. This can be handy if you have two different entries in a list, often created by multiple people performing data entry that should actually be one entry. A feature that can improve the speed of company file creation is the ability to copy and paste data into lists within QuickBooks from Microsoft Excel. You can copy and paste data from an Excel worksheet into the customers, vendors, service items, inventory part, and non-inventory part lists. To perform this task, select Lists and then Add or Edit Multiple List Entries from the menu bar to open the Add or Edit Multiple List Entries window. As you can see from the information shown at the top of this window, copying and pasting data into this window from Excel is a three-step process. First, use the List drop-down at the top of the window to select the list into which you would like to copy data from an Excel worksheet. After selecting a list, you will see the appropriate columns of information for that list shown at the bottom of the window. All lists contain a name column, as that column is used to identify items in the list. Next, you can customize the columns shown in this window to match the columns within the Excel worksheet. To do this, click the Customize Columns button in the upper right corner of the window. In the Customize Columns window that appears, select the column names from the available columns and chosen columns lists, and then click either the Add or Remove buttons to add or remove the desired columns. To reorganize their display, select the name of a chosen column in the Chosen Columns list and click the Move Up or Move Down buttons to move the selected fields up or down within the list. The order in which they are displayed from top to bottom in the Chosen Columns list is the order in which they will be displayed from left to right in the window after you click the OK button to approve your changes. After you have the desired columns shown in the correct order within the Add or Edit Multiple List Entries window, you can copy the data from your Microsoft Excel worksheet and then paste it into the columns shown within the Add or Edit Multiple List Entries window. After you have finished copying and pasting the data, you can then click the Save Changes button to save your new list entries. Collecting and paying sales tax can be complicated for some companies. For example, a company may have to collect and pay more than one sales tax. Many companies have a mix of taxable and non-taxable products and services to sell, and many also have some customers that are taxable while other customers are not. In QuickBooks, you can apply sales tax on selected items for taxable customers during the sales process. It also keeps track of how much sales tax is collected and for which taxing agencies the sales tax is collected. From this information, QuickBooks can then create the check or checks for the appropriate tax agency or agencies when the sales taxes collected are due. However, to use QuickBooks to track and pay sales tax, you must perform a few steps. Let's examine this process in detail to assist you in setting up your company to track and pay sales tax. First, you're going to set up sales tax agencies, sales tax items, and sales tax groups. So within the vendor list, you're going to create the tax agencies to whom you submit the sales taxes that are collected. Then, in the item list, you will create the separate tax rates you need to charge for each sales tax collected as sales tax items. If needed, you can also create sales tax groups that assess a set of sales taxes on sales in each district for which you collect and report sales tax. You will also indicate taxable and non-taxable customers and taxable and non-taxable items. So in your item and within your customer job list, you will indicate which items and customers are taxable or non-taxable. You will then assign sales tax rates or sales tax groups to your taxable customers. Then you will apply tax to taxable sales. Anytime you create an invoice or sales receipt that includes taxable items for a taxable customer, QuickBooks automatically calculates, collects, and tracks the sales tax. Eventually, you will need to find out what you owe. So as taxable sales are recorded, QuickBooks keeps track of the sales tax collected in a sales tax payable account. When it comes time to pay a sales tax agency, you can open the Sales Tax Payable Register to see how much is owed, or you can create a sales tax liability report. You then pay your tax agencies. So within the Pay Sales Tax window in QuickBooks, QuickBooks shows the sales tax owed and creates the check or checks to the tax agency or agencies for the amount or amounts collected. The first thing to do when setting up QuickBooks to collect sales tax is create the agencies for whom you collect sales taxes and to whom you pay the sales taxes collected as vendors within the vendors list. This allows you to remit checks for the sales taxes collected to these selected vendors within QuickBooks when the time comes for you to pay sales tax. To review the process of adding a new vendor record to the vendors list, please review Lesson 3.5, the vendors list. You must create the vendor records before creating the sales taxes because when you later create the individual sales tax items, you must specify the vendor for whom you are collecting the sales tax. After you have created vendor records for all of the agencies to whom you must remit sales taxes you collect, you can then create the actual sales tax items needed by your company file as items within your items list. After creating the vendor records to indicate the agencies for whom you are collecting sales taxes, you then create the actual sales tax rates within the QuickBooks item list. You can open the item list by selecting Lists, then Item List from the menu bar. Within the item list window, you must create a separate sales tax item for each sales tax that you must report, not necessarily for each sales tax you collect. This is because in states that collect both a state and county sales tax, some states want you to report state sales tax and county sales tax as separate items, while other states want you to report them as one item. To create a sales tax item within the item list, click the Item button in the lower left corner of the Item List window, and then select the New command from the pop-up menu that appears to open the new item window. In the new item window, select the Sales Tax Item choice from the Type drop-down at the top of the window. Then click into the Sales Tax Name field and enter the name for the sales tax. Enter a description of the sales tax into the Description field. If this sales tax item is the only sales tax collected within customer forms, then enter the sales tax description as you want it to appear within customer sales forms into the description field. Then enter the sales tax rate as a percentage into the tax rate percent field. Use the tax agency, vendor that you collect for dropdown to select the name of the vendor to whom you submit the payments of this sales tax after it has been collected. When you are finished creating the sales tax item, click the OK button to save the item into your item list. If needed, you can repeat this process until you have created all of the individual sales tax items that you must report as required for your company file. If you collect and pay more than one sales tax for multiple taxing authorities, such as a state sales tax and a city sales tax, you can then create a sales tax group within the item list, so customers will only see one cumulative sales tax amount on invoices and sales receipts. In the next lesson, you will learn how to create a sales tax group item within the item list to collect multiple sales taxes from multiple taxing authorities as a single line item within sales forms. If you have to collect a combination of sales taxes that you report separately, like a county sales tax and a city sales tax, you don't want to possibly confuse customers by itemizing the individual sales taxes you collect as separate line items within your sales forms. Many customers may mistakenly assume they are being taxed twice. Therefore, QuickBooks lets you group individual sales tax items you have created within the item list together as a sales tax group item, so customers will see a single sales tax line item amount within their sales forms, while QuickBooks will still report and collect each sales tax item within the sales tax group separately. You create the sales tax group as another type of item in your item list. Note that you must first create the individual sales tax items you collect as items within the item list before you create the sales tax group. After you have created the individual sales tax items for each tax you must report, you can then create a sales tax group within the item list by selecting Lists and then Item List from the menu bar in order to open the item list window. Then click the Item button in the lower left corner of the item list window and select the new command from the pop-up menu that appears to open the new item window. In the new item window, select the sales tax group choice from the type drop-down at the top of the window that appears. Enter a name for the sales tax group into the Group Name or Number field. Then enter the line item description you want the customers to see within their sales forms into the Description field. Then click into the first row under the Tax Item column at the bottom of the window and select the name of the first sales tax item that will be collected as part of this group. You can then click into the next row of the Tax Item column and select the next sales tax item that will be collected as part of this group. Repeat this process until you have entered all of the sales tax items that will be collected as part of this sales tax group. When you are finished, click the OK button to save this sales tax group into your item list. You should inspect your sales tax preferences within QuickBooks before you begin collecting sales taxes through your sales forms in case you need to modify any of the default settings. To do this, select Edit, then Preferences from the menu bar to open the Preferences dialog box. In the scroll box that appears at the left side of this screen, click the Sales Tax icon and then click the Company Preferences tab that appears to the right to set your company defaults for sales tax. At the top of the Company Preferences tab, ensure that the Yes option button for Do You Charge Sales Tax is selected to enable sales tax within your QuickBooks company file. Under the Set Up Sales Tax Items section, use the Your Most Common Sales Tax Item drop-down to select the default sales tax item or sales tax group to use within sales forms if you create a sales tax form for a customer that does not have a sales tax setting specified. In the Assign Sales Tax Code section, set the default codes used to indicate taxable and non-taxable customers and items within QuickBooks. You can also check the checkbox for Identify Taxable Amounts as T for Taxable when printing to print a T for taxable amounts within sales forms. In the When Do You Owe Sales Tax section, select the correct option button to indicate when you owe sales taxes that are collected. The options are as of the invoice date accrual basis or upon receipt of payment cash basis. Then select an option button within the When Do You Pay Sales Tax section to indicate how frequently you make sales tax payments. Your choices are monthly, quarterly, or annually. When you have finished setting your default sales tax preferences, click the OK button in the Preferences dialog box to save your settings. To collect sales taxes in QuickBooks, you must indicate who and what gets taxed within your company file. So within the Customers and Jobs list, enter which customers are taxable and non-taxable on the Sales Tax Settings tab within the New Customer or Edit Customer windows. On this tab, select the default tax code for the customer from the tax code drop-down by choosing either Tax for taxable customers or Non for non-taxable customers. For taxable customers, then select the default sales tax to apply to their sales from the tax item drop-down. After that, you must also set the taxable and non-taxable status of the line items used in sales forms within the item list. When creating items in the New Item or Edit Item window within the items list, use the tax code drop-down to select either Tax for taxable items or Non for non-taxable items. QuickBooks can then show whether or not an item is taxable when you enter it into a sales form and will collect the appropriate taxes from taxable customers. At that point, you are ready to collect sales taxes through the sales forms in QuickBooks, like the invoice and the sales receipt form. We examine collecting sales taxes when using these forms in Chapter 7 Basic Sales, and then examine the process for paying collected sales taxes in Chapter 14, Paying Sales Tax. For many companies, inventory is enabled if you create your company file using the Easy Step interview. However, if you did not enable inventory when you created your company file, you can enable it at a later point in time. You can enable inventory within your company file and view the default inventory preferences by selecting Edit, then Preferences from the menu bar. In the Preferences dialog box, select Items and Inventory from the scroll box at the left side of the window. To the right, click the Company Preferences tab and make sure that the Inventory and Purchase Orders are active checkbox is selected to enable inventory-related features in your QuickBooks company file. Then set any additional default settings needed for inventory and items. Click the OK button to set your default inventory preferences. If inventory is enabled, QuickBooks Pro uses the average cost method to determine the value of inventory. QuickBooks Pro cannot use the FIFO or LIFO methods. The average cost of the inventory equals the total cost of the items currently in stock divided by the number of items in stock. With QuickBooks Pro, you can track the number of items in stock and the value of your inventory after every purchase and sale. As you order, receive, and sell inventory items, QuickBooks records each inventory-related transaction and adjusts the inventory quantity and value accordingly. To track inventory, you must create each item you want to track as an inventory part within the item list. QuickBooks tracks the quantity and value as you sell or reorder items only for inventory part items within the item list. You use the item list to add, edit, delete, and inactivate inventory part items. You can display the item list by selecting Lists and then Item List from the menu bar. You can set up inventory part items within the item list to create items for which you want to track the quantity and value in QuickBooks. You cannot show inventory value for a manufacturing company or where the inventory value is changed as it goes through a process, as it is simply too complex for QuickBooks to compute. However, if you have items you purchase from a vendor, hold as inventory, and then resell to customers, you can enter those items as inventory parts for ease of tracking in QuickBooks. To create a new inventory part within QuickBooks, click the Item button in the lower left corner of the Item List window, and then select the New command from the pop-up menu to open the New Item window. Select Inventory Part from the Type drop-down at the top of the window. Enter the part name or number for the inventory item into the item name or number field. If the item you are creating is a sub-item of another larger item category, check the Sub-Item of checkbox and then select the main item for which this item will be a sub-item from the adjacent drop-down menu. When creating sub-items, the sub-item must be of the same item type as its parent item, and you must create the main item first before creating its sub-items. Next, enter the manufacturer's part number if used into the manufacturer's part number field. In the Purchase Information section, enter the description you want to have appear within the purchase forms into the Description on Purchase Transactions field. You can enter the default purchase cost of the item into the Cost field. This amount, if entered, will appear by default within purchase forms when you select the item, but you can always change it at that time if needed. Select the Cost of Goods Sold account used to track the cost of purchasing the item from the Cost of Goods Sold account drop-down field. If you have a preferred vendor for this item, select the name of that vendor from the Preferred Vendor drop-down field. If the item is the first item selected within a purchase form, the preferred vendor's information will be automatically filled in within the form. In the Sales Information section, enter the description of the item as you want it to appear within sales forms into the Description on Sales Transactions field. You can enter the default sales price into the Sales Price field. This amount, if entered, will be the default amount displayed within your sales forms when this item is selected. You can always change it at that time if needed. Select the tax code for the item from the Tax Code drop-down menu. Then enter the account used to track the amount of income generated by the sale of this item from the Income Account drop-down menu. In the Inventory Information section, select the Asset account used to track the value of inventory within the company file from the Asset account drop-down. Then enter the quantity at which you want to reorder this item into the Reorder Point field. If creating an inventory item for inventory you possessed as of the start date of your company file, you can enter the total quantity on hand as of the start date into the On Hand field. Then enter the total value of the quantity on hand into the Total Value field. Then select the start date of the company file from the As Of field. After creating the inventory part item, click the OK button to save the item. After entering inventory parts into the item list, you need to order the items to keep your inventory parts stocked. While QuickBooks doesn't require you to use purchase orders, it is recommended. If you use purchase orders, you can see what items you have ordered and when they are due to be received. You will also be able to compare items you receive against items listed in a purchase order. If you don't order items in advance, or just don't want to use purchase orders, you can buy inventory directly by using the Items tab within the Write Checks window or Enter Credit Card Charges window to select inventory items you purchase from vendors. To create a purchase order, select Vendors and then Create Purchase Orders from the menu bar. Select a vendor from the vendor drop-down at the top of the window to fill in the vendor's data within the form. Enter the date of the purchase order into the Date field. The next available purchase order number will appear within the PO Number field. If you have multiple shipping addresses, use the Ship To drop-down field to select the name of the shipping address to which you want the items shipped. If you are creating a purchase order that will be drop-shipped to a customer address, select the name of the customer from the Drop Ship To drop-down. Their address information will then appear within the Ship To field. To select a custom purchase order template you have created, select the name of the template from the Template drop-down. Click into the first available row under the Item column in the line item area and select the name of the inventory part item to order. The information for the inventory part will appear within the description and rate columns in the form, but you can change it if needed. Then enter the number of items to order into the Quantity field. The amount shown will be calculated by multiplying the quantity and the rate fields. Repeat this process until you have entered all the items you need to order into the purchase order. To enter a message to the vendor, type the message into the Vendor Message field. You can enter a memo into the Memo field if needed. After you have completed the purchase order, you can click the Save and Close button to save the purchase order and close the window, or click the Save and New button to save the purchase order and open another new purchase order form. After you initially create a purchase order, QuickBooks creates an account called Purchase Orders within the Chart of Accounts. This is a non-posting account type created by QuickBooks that does not appear within your balance sheet or income statement. The Purchase Orders account is simply used to produce a quick report showing current purchase orders, so you'll always know what has been ordered. After creating and submitting a purchase order to a vendor, you will either receive the inventory parts you ordered along with a bill for those parts, or you will receive the inventory ordered while the bill for the inventory arrives separately. In QuickBooks, you must receive the inventory ordered to sell the inventory. However, you must enter the bill when it is actually received for accounting purposes, especially if using accrual accounting methods. In the following lessons, you will examine how to enter inventory when it is received along with a bill, as well as how to receive inventory without a bill and create an item receipt that you can match to the bill when the bill finally arrives. If you receive inventory items from a purchase order along with a bill for those inventory items, you simply enter the items into inventory and also enter the bill for those items into QuickBooks. You can receive items into inventory and enter the bill for those items by selecting Vendors from the menu bar and then choosing Receive Items and Enter Bill. In the Enter Bills window that appears, select the vendor from whom you are receiving the items from the Vendor drop-down. If the vendor you select is one with whom you have open purchase orders, an Open POs Exist message box will appear to inform you of that fact. Click the Yes button within the message box to display the Open Purchase Orders window. Click to place a check mark into the leftmost column of the row that contains the purchase order for the inventory you received. Then click the OK button to return to the Enter Bills window. The items from the selected purchase order will appear on the Items tab at the bottom of the Enter Bills window. Ensure that the quantities that you ordered are correctly shown. If not, you can change the quantities shown if needed. Be sure to enter the correct date the bill was received into the Date field within the Enter Bills window. Also check the other bill information, such as the terms and bill due date. Enter the number assigned to the bill by the vendor into the Reference Number field. After you have finished entering the bill, click the Save and Close button to finish. After you've entered the inventory items and the bill, QuickBooks will move the items into inventory and create a bill for you to pay. Make sure you record the inventory when it arrives because QuickBooks must have the inventory on hand before you can enter a sale for the inventory parts. When you receive inventory items from a purchase order, you have to enter the items into inventory to sell them within your sales forms. Sometimes you receive these items without a corresponding bill. In this case, you create an item receipt that you can later match to the vendor bill when it finally arrives. To create an item receipt for items received without a bill, select Vendors and then Receive Items from the menu bar. This is essentially the same process as entering items received along with the vendor bill. So in the Enter Bill window, select the vendor from whom you are receiving the items from the Vendor drop-down menu. If the vendor you select is one with whom you have open purchase orders, an Open POs Exist message box will appear. To receive the inventory, click the Yes button within the message box to open the Open Purchase Orders window. Any open purchase orders you have with the selected vendor will then appear within this window. Click to place a check mark into the leftmost column of the row that contains the purchase order for the inventory you received. Then click the OK button to return to the Enter Bills window. The items from the purchase order will then appear on the Items tab at the bottom of the Enter Bills window. Ensure that the quantities you ordered are correctly shown. If not, you can change the quantities shown if needed. Notice that this Enter Bills window has no check mark in the Bill Received checkbox, which makes it an item receipt only. When the bill does arrive in the future, you will then match it to the appropriate item receipt to enter the bill for the inventory at the time it is actually received. To assist you in finding this particular item receipt in the future, as well as helping to distinguish this item receipt from any others you may have entered, type an item receipt code or other distinguishing information into the memo field. This will help you to match the bill to the item receipt later on when the bill finally arrives. At this point, you can simply click the Save and Close button to save the item receipt and enter the items received into inventory so you can sell them within your sales forms. When the vendor bill for items already received finally arrives, you must match the vendor bill to the item receipt that was created for those items when you received them. To do this, select Vendors from the menu bar and then choose the Enter Bill for Received Items command to open the Select Item Receipt window. In this window, select the vendor from whom you received the items and created the item receipt by using the Vendor drop-down. Any item receipts for the selected vendor will be listed within the columns in the Select Item Receipt window. Select the desired item receipt to convert into a bill from the listing shown. If you use the memo field when creating the item receipt, this information will appear in the columns to help you distinguish between the item receipts shown. After you have selected the item receipt that matches the bill received, click the OK button to continue to the Enter Bills window. QuickBooks will automatically create the bill from the item receipt by placing a check mark into the Bill Received checkbox field. Make sure that you have correctly entered the date the bill was received into the Date field, and also verify the accuracy of the other billing information. When completed, click the Save and Close button to save the changes and close the window. If prompted by QuickBooks to save your changes to the transaction, click the Yes button to save your changes to record the bill. The change referred to is simply the check mark that is now placed into the Bill Received field, changing the transaction from an item receipt into a bill. When you have loss, spoilage, or send out samples of your products, you need to manually adjust your inventory levels. QuickBooks allows you to do this in the Adjust Quantity or Value on Hand window. To view this window, select Vendors, then Inventory Activities, then Adjust Quantity or Value on Hand from the menu bar. First, select the type of inventory adjustment to make from the Adjustment Type drop-down menu. You can adjust the quantity, the total value, or both the quantity and total value. Enter the date of the adjustment into the Adjustment Date field. Then select the account the adjustment will affect from the Adjustment Account drop-down menu. To the right, enter an adjustment reference number into the Reference Number field. You can also assign a customer job or class to the transaction if needed. Enter the reason for the adjustment into the Memo field at the bottom of the form. Then click into the Item column in the first available row and select the first item to adjust from the drop-down list. If making a quantity adjustment, either type the new quantity or the quantity difference into the respective column. If you enter a loss of items into the quantity difference column, be sure to enter the difference as a negative number. If entering a total value adjustment, enter the new total value into the total value column. After adjusting the inventory, click the Save and Close button to finish. You can set up service items in the item list for services you provide. This helps you avoid repeatedly typing line item information into sales forms. Like all items, you create service items by first opening the item list. To create a new service item, click the Item button in the lower left corner of the list window and select the New command. In the New Item window, select Service from the Type drop-down. The fields that appear in the New Item window are similar to the ones shown when creating inventory part items. First, enter a name for the service into the item name or number box. If you want this service to be a sub-item of another service, check the Sub-Item of checkbox and then select the main service item under which the current item should be categorized from the adjacent drop-down menu. Enter a description of the service to display in invoices and sales receipts into the Description field. Enter the rate, set the tax code, and assign the amount to an income account by using the Account drop-down. For services purchased and then applied to customer invoices, such as subcontractor labor, you can check the This service is used in assemblies or is performed by a subcontractor or partner checkbox to change the fields available. If checked, this changes the fields to resemble the ones used when creating inventory part items. In this case, you enter information for the purchasing aspect of the service into the fields shown in the Purchase Information section. Then enter information used for the sales aspect of the service into the Sales Information set of fields. This then allows you to use the service item in both purchase and sales transactions if necessary. After you've created the service item, click the OK button to save the item into the item list. You can create non-inventory parts in the item list for items that are bought and/or sold but not tracked as inventory parts. QuickBooks tracks neither the quantity on hand nor the value of non-inventory part items. Like all items, you create non-inventory part items by first opening the item list. To create a new non-inventory part item, click the Item button in the lower left corner of the list window and select the New command. In the New Item window, select Non-Inventory Part from the Type drop-down. The fields that appear in the New Item window are similar to the ones shown when creating inventory part items. First, enter a name for the part into the Item Name or Number box. If you want this part to be a sub-item of another part, check the sub-item of checkbox and then select the main non-inventory part item under which the current item should be categorized from the adjacent drop-down menu. If needed, you can enter a part number into the manufacturer's part number field. Enter a description of the part to display in invoices and sales receipts into the description field. Then enter the price, set the tax code, and assign the amount to an income account using the account dropdown. For non-inventory parts which are purchased for a specific customer job, you can check the "This item is used in assemblies" or is purchased for a specific customer job checkbox. That will change the fields available. If checked, the fields available will be the same fields shown when creating inventory part items. In this case, enter the information for the purchasing aspect of the items into the fields shown within the Purchase Information section. Then enter the information for the sales aspect of the item into the Sales Information group of fields. This allows you to use the item in both purchase and sales transactions. After you have created the non-inventory part item, click the OK button to save the item into the item list. You can set up other charge items within the item list. Another charge item can be used to collect amounts for things such as freight charges or photocopying charges in a sales form. You could use it to collect membership dues or assess some other type of miscellaneous fee in a sales form. You create other charge items by opening the item list. To create a new other charge item, click the Item button in the lower left corner of the list window and select the New command. In the New Item window, select Other Charge from the Type drop-down. Enter a name for the charge into the Item Name or Number box. If you want this charge to be a sub-item of another charge, check the Sub-item of checkbox and then select the main charge item under which the current item should be categorized from the adjacent drop-down menu. Enter a description of the charge to display in invoices and sales receipts into the Description field. Enter the amount or percentage for the other charge item into the Amount or Percentage field. Then enter the tax code and assign the amount of the charge to an income account using the Account drop-down. For reimbursable charges, you can check the "This item is used in assemblies" or is a reimbursable charge checkbox to change the fields available. If checked, this changes the fields to resemble the ones used when creating inventory part items. If you do this, enter the information for the purchasing side of the charge into the fields shown in the Purchase Information section. Then enter the information used for the sales aspect of the charge into the Sales Information group of fields. This allows you to use the charge in both purchase and sales transactions if necessary. After you've created the other charge item, click the OK button to save the item into the item list. You can set up subtotal items in the item list. A subtotal will total all of the items within an invoice or sales receipt up to the last subtotal entered, if one was entered. This is useful for totaling all of the previous line items within an invoice before applying a discount to the subtotal amount. You create subtotal items by opening the item list. To create a new subtotal item, click the Item button in the lower left corner of the list window and select the New command. In the New Item window, select Subtotal from the Type drop-down. Enter a name for the subtotal into the Item Name or Number box. Then enter a description of the subtotal to display in invoices and sales receipts into the Description field. After you have created the subtotal item, click the OK button to save the item into the item list. You can create groups in the item list for items you may purchase individually but want to display as a single line item in a sales form. For instance, if you sold gravel by the ton and also assessed a service charge for the delivery, you could create both the gravel, a non-inventory part, and the service charge, an other charge, and then create a group like gravel delivery that consists of gravel and the delivery charge. This lets you show a single line item in the invoice instead of two separate line items. However, you can show the component items within the invoice if you prefer. Note that before you can create a group, you must first create all of the necessary items that will be included as parts of the group within the item list. After creating the items to add to the group, you can create the group item by clicking the Item button in the lower left corner of the item list window and selecting the New command. In the New Item window, select Group from the Type drop-down menu. Enter a name for the group into the group name or number box. Then enter the line item description of the group to display within sales forms into the description field. To add the items to the group, click into the first available row underneath the item column and use the drop-down that appears to select the first item. To specify a quantity for that item, click into the adjacent quantity column and enter the desired quantity. You can leave the quantity column blank to specify the quantity when you actually use the group item within sales forms if desired. Repeat this process of adding items and specifying quantities until you have added all of the necessary items to the group. If you wish to print the items within the group in sales forms when this item is used, you must check the Print Items in Group checkbox to enable the display of the group's items. Note that the items listed in a group item are always shown in the data entry view of sales forms so that you can change the quantities if needed. After you have created the group item, click the OK button to save the item into the item list. You can create discount items in the item list to discount the line item that was entered immediately above the discount line item within a sales form. If you create a discount and use it in an invoice, it applies the discount to the line item amount directly above it, but not to any other line items previously entered. Therefore, this item is often used in conjunction with the subtotal item in sales forms. For example, you can place the subtotal item underneath a list of line items within an invoice to get a subtotal amount, and then place the discount item under the subtotal item to remove the amount or percentage specified by the discount item from the subtotal. To create a discount item, open the item list and click the Item button in the lower left corner of the list window. Select the New command from the pop-up menu to open a new item window. In the new item window, select Discount from the Type drop-down. Enter a name for the discount into the item name or number box. If the discount is a sub-item of another discount item you have created, check the sub-item of checkbox and select its main discount item from the adjacent drop-down menu. Enter a description of the discount to display in sales forms into the description field. Enter either the percentage or amount of the discount into the amount or percent field. You must include the percent symbol if the number you want to enter is a percentage discount. Otherwise, QuickBooks assumes the number entered is a dollar amount. Select the account used to track discount amounts from the Account drop-down. Finally, use the tax code drop-down to set whether the discount is taken before or after sales tax is calculated. Select Tax to apply the discount before sales tax is calculated, and select None to apply the discount after sales tax has been calculated. After creating the discount item, click the OK button to save the item into the item list. You can create payments in the item list to subtract the amount of a customer payment from the total amount shown in an invoice when creating an invoice. You need a payment item when you receive a partial payment you need to apply to an invoice at or before the time you create the invoice. Note that this is not what is used when receiving a full payment at the time of sale. In that case, you simply fill out a sales receipt. When creating payment items, you have to create one for each unique payment type you accept, for example, cash, check, Visa, etc. When this item is used, it actually receives funds from the customer. Therefore, when creating this item type, you also have to select whether the amount received when this item is used in an invoice should be directly deposited to a specific account or placed into the undeposited funds account to deposit at a later time. To add a new payment item into the item list, click the Item button in the lower left corner of the item list window, and then select the New command from the pop-up menu that appears. In the new item window, select Payment from the Type drop-down. Click into the item name or number text box and enter a name for the payment item. Then enter the description you want to appear within invoices when this item is used into the description field. Use the Payment Method drop-down to select the method of payment associated with this particular payment item. Then decide where to place the money received when this item is used in an invoice by either selecting the Group with Other Undeposited Funds option button or by selecting the Deposit to option button and then choosing the account to directly deposit the amount into from the adjacent drop-down. After creating the payment item, Click the OK button to save the item into the item list. While you can always edit an item's price in the item list by opening the Edit Item window and directly changing the price within that window, you can also change the price of multiple items within the item list simultaneously. To do that, select Customers, then Change Item Prices from the menu bar to open the Change Item Prices window. Use the Item Type dropdown to filter the list and only show items within the item list that match the item type you select: service, inventory part, non-inventory part, or other charge. To mark the items whose price you want to change, click into the leftmost column next to the items to mark them with the check mark. You can check or uncheck the Mark All checkbox that appears at the bottom of the window to assist you in making item selections if needed. After you've selected the items whose prices you want to adjust, type either an amount or a percentage, in which case you must also type a %, into the Adjust Price of Marked Items by Amount or Percent field. Then use the Adjacent dropdown to select whether you are marking the prices up based on the unit cost or the current price. Below that, you can use the Round Up to Nearest dropdown to select how to round the calculated amounts. You can select a choice from the listing shown or enter your own rounding specifications. To actually adjust the item prices, click the Adjust button to adjust the pricing of the selected items. After that, you should see the new prices shown in the New Price column. Notice that this is a white column, so you can also click into the column for any item and simply type a new price if needed. To set the new prices for the selected items shown in the New Price column, click the OK button at the bottom of this window to close the window and save your pricing changes. When you sell anything for your company, you have to fill out one of the sales forms in QuickBooks. The sales form you use depends on whether you expect payment in the future or at the time of sale. If you expect to be paid in the future, you will fill out an invoice for the sale. Later on, you will match the customer payment you received to the associated invoice. However, if you take full payment at the time of sale, you will instead fill out a sales receipt to give to the customer. You can create an invoice for a customer by selecting Customers and then Create Invoices from the menu bar. You can create a sales receipt for a customer by selecting Customers, then enter Sales Receipts from the menu bar. You can see that these forms are very similar in their layout and usage. In this chapter, you will examine how to perform data entry within the sales forms in QuickBooks. When a customer agrees to make a purchase for which payment will be made at a later point in time, you enter the sale into an invoice. The invoice lists the customer's information along with an itemized list of how much that customer owes for the goods or services purchased. To create an invoice, select Customers, then Create Invoices from the menu bar. The particular invoice form used for the transaction can be changed by using the Template drop-down in the upper right corner of the invoice form to select the particular type of invoice to use for the transaction. Enter customer information into the sales forms, either by using the Customer Job drop-down to select a customer already entered into the customer list, or by typing the customer information into the Bill To and Ship To fields in the form. If you select a customer from the drop-down list, their information will automatically populate the fields in the form. You will need to specify additional information if manually entering customer data, such as selecting the desired sales terms from the Terms drop-down and specifying a sales tax code and sales tax rate to apply from the Customer Tax Code and Tax drop-downs at the bottom of the form, for example. After entering the customer information, select the invoice date from the Date drop-down field. The invoice number field will automatically increment itself up to the next available invoice number. At the bottom of the invoice, enter each item purchased on its own line by selecting a choice from the item column in the first available row within the line item area. The items that are shown in the drop-down list that appears are contained within the item list. In QuickBooks, line items are used for goods and services, as well as discounts, subtotals, and sales tax lines, among others. For each line item, specify the quantity and rate, or the amount, by using the quantity and rate fields, or by entering a total amount for the line item into the amount field. If specifying a quantity and rate, the amount will be calculated automatically. If this invoice is to be printed later, ensure that the Print Later checkbox in the main tab of the ribbon at the top of the window is checked. When finished, click the Save and Close button to save the invoice, or click the Save and New button to save the invoice and leave the window open so that you can continue creating invoices. After you create an invoice, QuickBooks places a record for the invoice into the Accounts Receivable account. If creating a sales receipt, the amount received is typically placed into the Undeposited Funds account. You can see how much is in either one of these accounts by simply opening the Chart of Accounts. You can also easily create batch invoices to give multiple selected customers an invoice for the same products or services. Before you create batch invoices, however, you should be sure you have the customer's information correctly recorded within the Customers and Jobs list in the Customer Center. QuickBooks uses the customer information you have entered to fill in the specific information for each customer when it creates the invoices. This includes the customer's terms, preferred delivery method, sales tax, and address information. QuickBooks uses this information to specify the customer's settings within each invoice created, as well as determine whether to print or email the invoice now or later. You should check your default preferences for sending forms in QuickBooks before creating batch invoices you intend to email. To do this, select Edit, then choose Preferences from the menu bar. Then select the Send Forms icon in the list at the left side of the Preferences dialog box that appears. In the My Preferences tab to the right, ensure that the Auto Check the Email Later checkbox if customer's preferred delivery method is email checkbox is checked. This ensures that batch invoices created for customers who have a preferred delivery method of email will have the email invoices marked as email later. Customers with a preferred delivery method of mail will have the To Be Printed checkbox checked within their batch invoices. If the delivery method is unspecified, neither box will be checked. After checking the Send settings in the Preferences dialog box, click the OK button to apply them. To create batch invoices, select Customers from the menu bar, then choose the Create Batch Invoices command. You can click the OK button in the message box that appears if needed. In the Batch Invoice window, you can then select the customers for whom you want to create batch invoices. To create a one-time batch invoice for customers, select the names of the customers or customer jobs from the left list, and then click the Add button to move them into the list at the right side of the dialog box. To instead create a billing group of customers to more easily select a set of customers for whom you may send out regular batch invoices in the future, click the Billing Group drop-down in the upper right corner of the window, and then select the Add New command to open the Group Name dialog box. Type a name for the group of customers into the Name field, and then click the Save button to create the group in the right list. Then select the names of the customers or customer jobs to add to the group from the left list, and click the Add button to add them into the group at the right side of the window. When finished, click the Save Group button below the right list to save the customers into the billing group you created. In the future, you will be able to select the name of the billing group you created from the Billing Group drop-down to automatically select those customers in the group when creating batch invoices. You can also select customers in a billing group and click the Remove button to remove them from the list. Just be sure to click the Save Group button again after doing this to save the changes to the group. To manage the groups you have created, to rename or delete them if desired, you can click the Manage Groups button in the upper right corner of the window to open the Manage Billing Groups window. You can select the name of a billing group in the left list to manage first. To rename a group, type a new name into the Billing Group field to the right, and then click the Save button below the field. To delete the billing group, simply click the Delete button below the Billing Group field and then click the Yes button in the confirmation message box that appears. You can click the Close button in the Manage Billing Groups dialog box to close it and return to the Batch Invoice window when finished. After selecting the Customers to Batch Invoice, click the Next button at the bottom of the window to continue. In this screen, enter the invoice date into the Date field, and, if needed, select the invoice template to use from the Template drop-down. Then enter the line items that will appear in the invoice by clicking into the first row under the item column and selecting the first invoice item from the drop-down that appears. Enter the quantity and rate for the item under the quantity and rate columns, and be sure to check or enter the value in the amount column. Repeat this process as needed until you have added all of the required line items into the line item area. If needed, you can enter a customer message to print on the batch invoices into the customer message field at the bottom of the screen. When finished, click the Next button to continue. In the last screen, double-check the invoice information shown for each customer. If there is a customer invoice you do not want to create, you can click into the leftmost Select column to remove the check mark from that row and skip creating an invoice for that customer. When you are ready to create the invoices, click the Create Invoices button at the bottom of the screen to continue. In the Batch Invoice Summary dialog box that appears, you can see the summary of the invoices that were created, grouped by Send method. To batch print the invoices from this batch group, click the Print button in this dialog box. To batch email the invoices from the batch group, click the Email button. When you are finished reviewing the summary, you can click the Close button in the dialog box to close the window. If taking payment from the customer at the time of sale for a purchase they have made, you enter the transaction into a sales receipt. You can create a sales receipt by selecting Customers, then Enter Sales Receipts from the menu bar. In the Enter Sales Receipts screen, you enter information in much the same way that you do within an invoice. Also, as with invoices, you can select which sales receipt template to use by choosing one from the template drop-down available in the upper right corner of the form. Enter the customer's information into the sales receipt either by selecting a customer from the Customer Job drop-down or by manually entering the customer's information into the Sold To field. If manually entering customer data, be sure to enter the customer's sales tax information by using the Customer Tax Code and the Tax drop-down fields at the bottom of the form. Enter the date of the sale by selecting it from the Date Calendar drop-down. The sale number field will automatically increment itself up to the next available sales receipt number. Click the button in the upper left corner of the form that corresponds to the method of payment used. If needed, you can click the drop-down arrow in the lower right corner of this button group to view additional payment methods in a drop-down menu. You can then select the additional payment method from this drop-down. For credit and debit payments, you can select a credit card type from the Payment drop-down and enter the credit card number and expiration date into the Card Number and Expiration Date fields shown in the drop-down menu that appears when you click the Credit or Debit Payment button. Then click the Done button in the drop-down menu to record the credit card information. If they pay by check, you can enter the check number into the check number field at the right side of the sales receipt window. Click into the first available row within the Line Items area and enter the line items for the sales transaction by selecting items from the Item column. Enter the quantity and rate or amount for each item as needed. If this receipt is to be printed later, ensure that the Print Later checkbox on the main tab of the ribbon at the top of the window is checked. After entering the sales information, click the Save and Close button to save the sales receipt and close the window. Money received through a sales receipt is deposited into an undeposited funds account by default. There is no receiving payment at a later point in time when using a sales receipt, as you have taken the payment up front. You simply save and close the screen to enter the sale. To find any transaction form at a later point in time, you can use the Find feature of QuickBooks to locate it. To find an invoice or any other type of transaction, open the associated form for which you want to search. Using the example of finding an invoice, you would therefore open the Create Invoices window. Then select Edit and choose the Find Form Type command from the menu bar to open the Find Form Type window, in this case the form type being an invoice. You could also just click the Find button that appears within the Main tab within the ribbon at the top of the form to open this same window as well. Within the Find window, you will see different parameters for the type of form you selected that can be used as the search criteria. Type what you are looking for into one of the available search parameter fields and then click the Find button. If there is only one matching form, such as would be the case if searching for an invoice by using the invoice number search parameter, then QuickBooks will immediately open the matching form. If there are multiple matching results, however, then QuickBooks will display those results in a result set window. You can double-click the item you are looking for within the result set to open it. To see how the currently opened sales form will look when printed, click the drop-down arrow below the Print button in the main tab of the ribbon at the top of the sales form and select the Preview command from the drop-down menu to show the print preview of the sales form. To print invoices or sales receipts, open the form that contains the information you want to print and click the Print button in the main tab of the ribbon at the top of the invoice to open the Print dialog box where you can set the printing parameters. After you set any printing parameters, click the Print button at the right side of the Print dialog box to print the form to the selected printer. Sometimes businesses want to vary an item's price when selling the item to different customer types. For instance, you may charge different rates to residential customers versus commercial customers. You can associate price levels with specific customers, so each time you create a sales form for that customer, QuickBooks will use the appropriate price level when calculating rates and amounts for line items within sales forms for the selected customer. You can also associate price levels with specific line items in a sales form if desired. Using this method, you are only discounting specific items in a sales form, not all items for a specific customer or type of customer. Price levels make it easy to use different line item rates within sales forms without having to calculate percentage amounts manually. Price levels can affect amounts for service, inventory, and non-inventory part items only. Also note that price levels are, however, only a feature of QuickBooks Pro or QuickBooks Premier. In QuickBooks Pro, you can only set price level discounts as a flat percentage. If using the QuickBooks Premier version, however, you can set price levels for various quantities of individual items if preferred. In this lesson, you'll examine how to create basic price levels in QuickBooks Pro. To access and create price levels, open the Price Level list. You can do this by selecting Lists, then Price Level List from the menu bar to open the Price Level List window. To create a new price level, click the Price Level button in the lower left corner of the Price Level list and select the New command from the pop-up menu to open the new price level window where you enter the price level's information. Enter a name for the new price level into the Price Level Name text box. Use the drop-down to the right of the This Price Level Will label to select either Decrease or Increase. Then enter the percentage by which to increase or decrease item prices into the field to the right of the label. You can use the Round Up to Nearest drop-down to select how to round the pricing that is calculated. After setting the price level, click the OK button to add it into the price level list. You can select an entry made within the price level list and then click the Price Level button in the lower left corner to edit or delete your entries by selecting the desired command from the pop-up menu that appears. After creating the price levels, you can either assign them to specific customers to apply a selected price level to all future sales for the customer by default, or you can manually apply price levels to specific line items and sales forms as the need arises. You can apply a default price level to any customer when using the Edit Customer or New Customer windows. In either window, select the Payment Settings tab and then use the Price Level drop-down to select a default price level to associate with this customer's sales. Then click the OK button to set the price level for the customer. When you later create sales forms for this customer and select items within the line item area of the sales form, note that that customer's price level will be automatically calculated and applied. Also note that after you have created price levels, you can use the Rate drop-down that appears within the Rate column in the line item area in sales forms to select a price level on a per line item basis if needed. This allows you to manually set a pricing level for selected items within a sales form. You can set the default preferences for finance charges assessed in customer statements within the Preferences window in QuickBooks. To do this, select Edit and then Preferences from the menu bar to open the Preferences window, where you can set the default behaviors of the currently opened company file. Click the Finance Charge icon at the left side of the Preferences window, and then click the Company Preferences tab at the right side of the window to set the finance charge settings if you charge finance charges. Note that it is not required that you assess finance charges, and you should consult the laws for your district regarding assessment of finance charges before assessing them to customers. In this tab, you can enter the annual interest rate to charge as a percentage into the annual interest rate percent field. You can then enter a minimum finance charge to apply in the minimum finance charge box. Next, enter the number of days you want to set as the grace period into the grace period in days box. Use the Finance Charge Account drop-down to select the account used to track income from finance charges. If needed, you can check the Assess Finance Charges on Overdue Finance Charges to enable that feature when calculating finance charge amounts. Below that, you can select either the Due Date or Invoice or Billed Date option button to select the date that should be used when calculating charges. Also, if you want the finance charge invoices that are created to be marked as to be printed by default, then check the Mark Finance Charge Invoices to be printed checkbox. That way you can print them as a batch after assessing finance charges if needed. After you've set your finance charge defaults, click the OK button to apply them. Entering statement charges is the first step in preparing billing statements for customers. This can be an effective way to collect customer charges over a period of time for certain types of businesses that do not need to send out an invoice for each charge assessed to a customer. With statement charges, you simply enter the charges directly into each customer's accounts receivable register as they are accrued. A QuickBooks statement prints information already recorded by statement charges and other receivables transactions. Therefore, you can't edit the statement's information directly within the statement window. A typical statement covers a time period and shows the customer's previous balance, new charges, payments or credits you've received and applied to the account, and the new balance for the customer during the period specified. A statement can simply show information like invoices sent to and payments received from a customer over a time period, or they can be used for billing, showing statement charges due and requesting payment of those charges. To create statements, select Customers and then choose the Create Statements command from the menu bar to view the Create Statements window. In the Create Statements window, you can decide what type of statement you will be creating by setting the desired parameters. First, enter the statement date by using the Statement Date Calendar Date selector. This date will appear at the top of each statement and also appear as the billed date for billing statements. Next, decide what type of statement to send. The statement can either show transactions from one date to another, or show all open transactions as of the statement date entered. To create a statement that shows all transactions over a specified date range, select the Statement Period From option, and then select the first date from the adjacent Calendar Date selector. Then choose the ending date for the transactions by selecting the ending date from the To Calendar Date selector. To show all open transactions instead, select the All Open Transactions as of the Statement Date option. If you select that option, you can check the Include Only Transactions over blank days past the due date option, and then enter the number of days into the adjacent field to create a statement that shows only past due charges if desired. Next, select the customers to whom you want to send the statements by choosing one of the available option buttons and then making any additional selections as needed within the Select Customers section. After that, you can set any additional options you would like the statements to possess by checking the desired checkboxes available in the Select Additional Options section. Also note that you can use the Template drop-down to select a custom statement template if available. To assess finance charges, click the Assess Finance Charges button within the Create Statements window to open the Assess Finance Charges window. Here you will assess finance charges on any customers and jobs that are marked with a check mark. You can remove the check marks from checkboxes of customers and jobs to whom you do not want to assess a finance charge. The finance charges are shown in the rightmost column. They are calculated based on the default finance charge settings you created within the Preferences window. You can change the amount shown by typing the desired amount to charge into the column if needed. When you are ready to assess the finance charges shown, click the Assess Charges button to assess the charges and return to the Create Statements window again. At that point, you can click either the Preview, Print, or Email buttons to preview, print, or email the statements you have selected to your customers. If receiving a payment at the time of sale, you fill out a sales receipt to record the customer payment. When you invoice a customer and receive payment on that invoice at a later point in time, you enter the payment into the QuickBooks Receive Payments window. This allows you to match customer payments to customer invoices. To open this window, select Customers, then Receive Payments from the menu bar. The simplest payment case occurs when a customer has one outstanding invoice and sends you a payment for the full amount. However, you can also enter partial payments if you receive them. You can even select to which invoices you apply the payment amount. If you receive one payment, you can apply the amount to multiple invoices as well. QuickBooks can also handle prepayments, down payments, and overpayments. In this chapter, you will look at the different ways you can handle customer payments. To enter a full payment you receive, select the customer or customer job from whom you are receiving the payment from the Received From drop-down in the Receive Payments window. Any unpaid invoices for the selected customer or customer job will be displayed at the bottom of the window. Select the date the payment was received from the Date calendar selector. Enter the payment amount into the Payment Amount field. Click the Payment Method button in the window that corresponds to the method of payment received. If needed, you can click the drop-down arrow that appears in the lower right corner of this button group to view additional payment methods in a drop-down menu. You can then select the additional payment method from this drop-down. For credit or debit payments, you can select a credit card type from the payment drop-down and then enter the credit card number and expiration date into the card number and expiration date fields shown in the drop-down menu that appears when you click the credit or debit payment button. Then click the Done button in the drop-down menu to record the credit card information. If they pay by check, then enter the check number into the check number field. At the bottom of the window, ensure that there is a check mark in the check mark column to the left of the invoice against which you are receiving payment. Note that all funds received within this window are placed into the Undeposited Funds account by default. When you're finished, click the Save and Close button to save and close the Receive Payments window. If you have other customer payments to process, you may find it easier to click the Save and New button instead to save the transaction but leave the Receive Payments window open so you can continue entering customer payments. If entering a partial customer payment, begin by selecting Customers, then Receive Payments from the menu bar to open the Receive Payments window. Select the name of the customer or customer job from the Received From drop-down. Enter the partial payment date, amount, and payment method at the top of this window, just as when accepting a full payment. Unpaid invoices will appear at the bottom of the window. If you want QuickBooks to attribute the payment to anything other than the oldest invoice, you would click the Unapply Payment button that appears in the main tab of the ribbon at the top of the window to clear the check marks from the selected invoices. In the listing of unpaid invoices, you can click into the rightmost white column and change the amount applied to the desired invoice by typing the partial payment amount. In QuickBooks, entering a partial payment also allows you to select either the Leave This as an Underpayment or Write Off the Extra Amount option buttons at the bottom of the screen. You may want to use this feature to write off the extra amount if a customer accidentally shorted you by a small amount that is not worth rebilling. By default, though, Leave This as an Underpayment is selected, and you will be able to receive payments on that invoice again in the future. When finished, click either the Save and Close or Save and New buttons to save the transaction and accept the partial payment amount. You can also apply a single payment amount from a customer to multiple outstanding invoices for that customer by placing a check mark in the check mark column that appears to the left of the invoices against which you want to apply the cumulative payment amount received until the total payment has been distributed to the correct invoices. To do this, select Customers and then choose Receive Payments from the menu bar to open the Receive Payments window. Select the customer or customer job who sent you the payment from the Received From dropdown. Enter the payment date, amount, and payment method at the top of this window. QuickBooks will automatically attribute the amount entered against all of the outstanding invoices shown from the oldest to the newest. You can check and uncheck the invoices by clicking into the leftmost checkmark column to apply and remove payment amounts as needed until the entire amount received has been attributed to the correct invoices in the correct amounts. You can also change the amounts applied to each invoice if needed by changing the amounts shown in the payment column at the right end of the outstanding invoices list. After you've attributed the single payment received to the correct outstanding invoices in the correct amounts, you can then click either the Save and Close or Save and New button to save the transaction, and then either close the window or open another new transaction window. If the customer pays you more than is due, you can enter the entire amount received into the Receive Payments window. The amount left over after you've applied the entire amount to outstanding invoices will be shown in the overpayment area at the bottom left corner of the Receive Payments window. You can then select an option button shown in the area to indicate what you want QuickBooks to do with the overpayment. You can select the Leave the Credit to be Used Later option button to receive the money and issue a customer credit in the amount of the overpayment, or select the Refund the Amount to the Customer option button to issue a refund check to the customer when you save the transaction. Select the desired option button and then click either the Save and Close or Save and New buttons to save the transaction window and either generate a credit or issue a refund check. If you choose to issue a credit to the customer for the amount overpaid, you can apply that credit to future invoices for that specific customer or customer job, and only that specific customer or customer job. You can also issue the customer a refund check later on for the amount overpaid if it turns out they will not be needing the credit for any future invoices. Just as when you receive an overpayment, if a customer gives you a down payment or prepayment which you want to take and then invoice them at a later date, you can enter the entire payment received for the customer or customer job into the Receive Payments window. Since they have no outstanding invoice against which to apply the amount entered, the entire amount will be saved as a customer credit when you click either the Save and Close or Save and New buttons. Later on, after you have invoiced the customer or customer job, you must return to the Receive Payments window to apply the credit against the invoice that was created. In the next lesson, we will examine how to apply customer credits created by overpayments, down payments, or prepayments to outstanding customer invoices. When a customer overpays you or gives you a down payment or prepayment, you record the amount received in the Receive Payments window. Doing this creates a credit for the customer or customer job specified. Later on, after you have created an invoice for the specific customer or customer job, you can return to the Receive Payments window to apply the customer's existing credit. To apply an existing customer credit to an outstanding invoice in the Receive Payments window, select the name of the customer or customer job who has the outstanding invoices and the credit you want to apply. Select the invoice against which you wish to apply the credit from the listing shown. You should not attempt to place a check mark in front of the invoice, as that indicates the invoice is being paid. Instead, click anywhere else within the invoice line, other than the checkmark column, to select the desired invoice against which you wish to apply the customer's credit. Then click the Discounts and Credits button in the main tab of the ribbon at the top of the window to open the Discount and Credits window. Select the Credits tab if necessary to view any available customer credits. To apply the entire credit shown, ensure there is a check mark next to the credit within the Available Credits section in the far left column. The amount shown will be displayed in the Amount to Use column. To apply a partial credit amount, simply change the amount of credit applied by changing the amount shown in the Amount to Use column. After entering the amount of credit to apply, click the Done button to apply the credit amount to the selected invoice and return to the Receive Payments window. The credit amount applied will appear in the Credits column at the bottom of this window. You can then finish receiving customer payment as needed within the Receive Payments window. When finished, you can click either the Save and Close or Save and New buttons to save the transaction and either close the window or clear the window, leaving it open for additional entries. When you receive funds from customers in the Receive Payments window and place the funds into the Undeposited Funds Asset account, QuickBooks tracks that money until it is actually deposited at the bank. When you're ready to take the payments to the bank, you can record the deposit in QuickBooks and group the various payments you received and placed into the Undeposited Funds account into a single amount that is shown as being deposited into your selected bank account. This makes the amounts recorded as deposits for the bank account in QuickBooks match the amounts recorded by your bank statements, which makes the account reconciliation much easier. Also, when preparing the funds for deposit in QuickBooks, you can bring a deposit slip to bring with you to the bank if needed, and then make the deposit at the bank. When you record the deposit in QuickBooks, it takes the deposited funds and adds it to the selected bank account register. You can also tell QuickBooks to leave out a certain amount for cash back if needed that you can record to an account like petty cash, for example. To make a deposit in QuickBooks, select Banking, then Make Deposits from the menu bar. This will most often then cause the Payments to Deposit window to appear on screen. In the Payments to Deposit window, you can see all the customer payments you have received through the Receive Payments window and elected to move to the Undeposited Funds account. Use the View Payment Method Type drop-down at the top of this window to select the type of payments to view if needed. You must then check any received amounts you will actually be taking to the bank to deposit. After making your selections, click the OK button to continue to the actual Make Deposits window. In this window, you will see the amounts you just selected shown in a list. Use the Deposit To drop-down to select the name of the bank account into which you would like to deposit the selected funds. Enter the date of the actual deposit into the Date field. If necessary, you can click into the next available blank row within the deposit to record any other miscellaneous amounts to be deposited, such as owner's contributions, for example. If you need to get cash back from the deposit, use the Cash Back Goes To drop-down to select the account used to record cash back, such as petty cash. Then enter the reason why the cash was being held back into the Cash Back Memo field. Enter the amount of cash to be held back from the deposit into the Cash Back Amount field. To print a deposit slip or deposit summary to take with you to the bank, click the drop-down arrow to the right of the Print button in the toolbar at the top of the window, and then choose either the Deposit Slip or Deposit Summary command. You can then print the selected form within the Print dialog box that appears. When you're ready to record the deposit, click the Save and Close button to save the transaction and close the Make Deposits window. QuickBooks has an easy way to handle bounced checks received from customers as payments against invoices or received as payment within sales receipts. This feature will mark the previously paid invoice or sales receipt as unpaid, remove the funds received from your bank account, allow you to enter any bank service fees assessed by your bank, and also create a new invoice for those fees that you can give to the customer who bounced the check. This is a terrific feature that allows you to easily deal with a situation that often caused many headaches when it occurred. To record a bounced check, open the Receive Payments window by selecting Customers, then Receive Payments from the menu bar. Then find or navigate to the specific payment that you received from the customer that contains the bounced check and display that received payment within this window. With the payment displayed, click the Record Bounced Check button within the main tab in the ribbon at the top of the window. In the Manage Bounced Check window, enter the amount of the bank fee associated with this bounced check into the bank fee field. Select the date that the bank fee was assessed by your financial institution from the adjacent Date Field Calendar drop-down, or simply type the date value directly into the field. Use the Expense Account drop-down to select the expense account you use to track bank service fees or bank service charges. If you have class tracking enabled within your company file, you can select a class from the Class drop-down to classify the bank fee. Enter the amount to charge the customer for the bounced check into the Customer Fee field. Usually this amount is for more than the bank fee that was incurred for the bounced check. After entering the amount to bill to the customer, click the Next button to continue. On the next screen, titled Bounced Check Summary, you will see a listing of the various actions that QuickBooks will take when you click the Finish button at the bottom of the window. Note the various transactions that will occur, and then click the Finish button to proceed. QuickBooks will then create the various transactions that it listed within this screen to account for the bounced check. You can then re-invoice the customer for the original invoice as well as the new bounced check invoice that QuickBooks creates. The Receive Payments window for the original payment transaction will also be marked as bounced check. Just click the Save and Close button to save the transaction and close the Receive Payments window when finished. You can easily refund a customer's purchase if they return merchandise by creating a credit memo and then issuing a refund check. To do this, first create a credit memo for the return. After creating the credit memo, then create a refund check for the amount of the credit memo to refund the customer. To create a credit memo for a customer's return, select Customers, then Create Credit Memos or Refunds from the menu bar. In the Create Credit Memos or Refunds window that appears, select the name of the customer or customer job for whom the credit memo is being issued from the Customer Job dropdown. Next, enter the items that were returned in the Line Items area at the bottom of the window. Then click the Use Credit to Give Refund button in the main tab of the ribbon at the top of the window to issue a refund check for the amount of the credit memo. Within the window that appears, select the account used to withdraw funds for the refund check and enter any other information needed for the refund into the fields shown. Then click the OK button to continue. Finally, ensure you save and print the refund check as well as the credit memo to give to the customer. If a customer overpays an invoice or statement or gives you a down payment or prepayment, you create a credit for that customer when you enter the payment into the Receive Payments window. Later on, if the customer requests that you send the amount back or cancels the order, you can issue a refund check on the credit for the payment that you accepted. To create the refund check, just select Banking and then Write Checks from the menu bar to open the Write Checks window. At the very top of the window, use the Bank Account drop-down to select the account against which the funds will be withdrawn. Enter the date of the check into the Date field. Use the Pay to the Order of drop-down to select the name of the customer or customer job to whom you are issuing the refund. If you will be printing this check, check the Print Later checkbox that appears in the Main tab of the ribbon at the top of the window. Enter the amount of the credit refund into the Dollars field and set the account in the Expenses tab to the Accounts Receivable account. Then save and print the check and give it to the customer. After that, you must return to the Receive Payments window to match the credit to the refund check that you just wrote to the customer or customer job. To do this, open the Receive Payments window and select the name of the customer or customer job from the Received From drop-down. In the listing at the bottom of the window, you should see the refund check that you just wrote listed. Select the check in the list, but do not mark it with a check mark by clicking into the checkmark column to the left of the check. You can click into any of the other columns to simply select and highlight the line item. Then click the Discounts and Credits button that appears in the Main tab of the ribbon at the top of the window. Select the Credits tab in the Discount and Credits window. If needed, click into the leftmost checkmark column next to the credit that matches the refund check amount to select it. Then click the Done button to apply the credit to the check. You can then click the Save and Close button to finish the transaction. You can set the bill payment preferences before using the Accounts Payable features of QuickBooks by selecting Edit and then Preferences from the menu bar to open the Preferences window. Click the Bills icon at the left side of the Preferences window, and then click the Company Preferences tab that appears at the right side of the window to view and set the default billing preferences. In the Entering Bills section, enter the default number of days after entry that bills without a due date should be paid by typing a number into the Bills are due blank days after receipt field. You can also check the Warn about duplicate bill numbers from the same vendor checkbox to be alerted to that fact if it occurs. In the Paying Bills section, if you wish to automatically use discounts and credits when available, check the Automatically Use Credits and/or the Automatically Use Discounts checkboxes. If checked, use the adjacent drop-down to select the account used to track vendor discounts and credits. After setting the desired billing preferences, click the OK button to apply them. You should always enter bills into QuickBooks as soon as you receive them. To enter a bill, select Vendors, then Enter Bills from the menu bar to open the Enter Bills window. The top half of the Enter Bills window is where you enter the bill information. The bottom half of the window is where you assign the bill amount to different expense accounts or list the inventory items purchased. When entering bills for inventory items received, notice that the Bill Received checkbox at the top of the window has a check mark in it by default. You should only clear the check from this box if using QuickBooks for purchase orders and inventory, and you want to record items you have received but not been billed for yet. Removing the check from this box in that situation changes the transaction into an item receipt instead. When entering a bill, select the name of the vendor that sent you the bill from the vendor drop-down. Ensure you have entered the date on which you received the bill into the date field. Ensure the bill's number is shown within the reference number field. Then enter the amount of the bill into the amount due field. Ensure that you have the correct due date set within the bill due field. For bills you receive that are not related to purchasing inventory, enter the expense account this bill will affect in the Expenses tab at the bottom of this bill. That way, when you later create the check that pays this bill, you won't need to re-enter any accounting information. On the Expenses tab, you can allocate the total amount of the bill shown in the Amount Due field between multiple expense accounts. To do this, choose the first account the bill affects, and then enter the amount to attribute to that account into the Amount column. Then click into the Next row under the Account column and select the next account affected by the bill amount. Enter the amount to attribute to the second account into the Amount column within that row. Repeat this process as needed until you have allocated the total amount of the bill to the necessary expense accounts. After entering the bill and attributing it to the correct accounts, you can save the bill by either clicking the Save and Close button to save the bill and close the window, or clicking the Save and New button to save the transaction and leave the Enter Bills window open for further bill entry. To pay bills you have entered, open the Pay Bills window by selecting Vendors, then Pay Bills from the menu bar. At the top of the Pay Bills window, select either the option button to show bills due on or before a date you select, or the option button to show all bills. Place a check mark in front of the bill or bills to pay by clicking within the column to the left of those bills. QuickBooks will place the amount to pay for each bill selected into the rightmost Amount to Pay column. Notice that this is a white column. If necessary, you can change the amounts shown here to make a partial payment on a selected bill. In the middle of the Pay Bills window, you'll see vendor discount and credit information for the currently selected or highlighted bill. You can click the Go to Bill button to open the original bill in the Enter Bills window if you need to review it. The Set Discount and Set Credits buttons are used to take early payment discounts and apply vendor credits to selected bills if available. You will see how to perform these tasks in separate lessons in this chapter. In the Payment section of the Pay Bills window, ensure you have the correct payment date entered into the Date field. Use the Method drop-down to select the desired method of payment for the checked bills. If you select Check from this drop-down, you must select either the To Be Printed or Assign Check Number option button. If you select the To Be Printed option button, then the checks will be assigned a check number later when you print them. If you select the Assign Check Number option, you enter the starting check number into the window that appears after you click the Pay Selected Bills button. If paying by check, select the account from which the funds to pay the selected bill will be withdrawn by choosing the desired account from the Account drop-down. If you select Credit Card as the payment method, then use the adjacent Account drop-down to select the credit card account to which you want to apply this bill payment. When finished, click the Pay Selected Bills button to pay the checked bills in this window. When you pay a bill within QuickBooks, an entry is made in the Accounts Payable register showing a decrease by the amount of the bill payment to the total accounts payable balance. QuickBooks also creates a check from your checking account to pay the bill. You can open the Accounts Payable register by opening the chart of accounts and then double-clicking the Accounts Payable entry to see the register. You could also view the check that is created by double-clicking your checking account in the chart of accounts to view that register. Notice that this type of check is called a bill payment check and differs from the typical check you create when creating checks within the Write Checks window. On those checks, you see the expenses directly on the check voucher portion, while in the bill payment checks, the bottom portion instead shows the bills paid by the check. If you take advantage of discounts for early bill payments offered by some vendors, you can record the discounts directly in the Pay Bills window when you pay the bills by the date specified by your vendor's terms. This allows you to let QuickBooks track the discount amounts. You can manually take this discount as you pay the bill in the Pay Bills window if you do not have QuickBooks set up to automatically take vendor discounts and credits. To do this, first select the qualifying bill to pay and then click the Set Discount button. QuickBooks will display the Discount and Credits window where the amount of the discount based on the terms of the agreement will be displayed. Select the discount account you use to track the amount of early payment discounts. After you've selected the appropriate account, click the Done button to close the Discount and Credits window. Then continue to pay the bill as you normally would. If you receive a credit from a vendor that you want to enter and later use against the next bill you receive from them, you can easily do that in QuickBooks. To enter the vendor credit, open the Enter Bills window by selecting Vendors and then Enter Bills from the menu bar. Select the option button for Credit at the top of the Enter Bills window. The word Credit should now appear at the top of the form. At that point, select the name of the vendor who issued the credit from the Vendor drop-down. Enter the date you received the credit from the Date Calendar selector. If there's a number associated with the credit, enter that number into the Reference Number field. Enter the amount of the credit into the Credit Amount field. Select the accounts or items that the credit will affect on the Expenses or Items tab as appropriate at the bottom of the window. Then click the Save and Close button to save the credit for later use when you go to pay the next bill from that vendor through the Pay Bills window. If you've received a credit from a vendor and entered it into QuickBooks, you can use it on the next payment you make to that vendor. You can manually take this credit as you pay the next bill in the Pay Bills window if you do not have QuickBooks set to automatically apply discounts and credits. To do this, open the Pay Bills window by selecting Vendors, then Pay Bills from the menu bar. Select the bill for which you have a vendor credit you would like to apply. Then click the Set Credits button. QuickBooks will display the Discount and Credits window and show the Credits tab, where the amount of the credit will be displayed. You can select how much of the available vendor credit to use by typing it into the Amount to Use column if you only want to use a portion of a larger credit. Next, click the Done button to close the Discount and Credits window. From that point, just enter the rest of the bill payment information as normal to finish paying the remainder of the bill. You can enter checks directly into the checking account register rather than through the Write Checks window if you prefer. This doesn't allow you to see how the check will appear if printed, but may seem familiar to you since it looks like a typical checkbook register. Also, for businesses that may not write very many checks or do not use QuickBooks for printing checks, it may simply be easier to transfer the information from the paper check register into this register for accounting purposes. Note that for any accounts that appear on the balance sheet of your company, you have an associated register you can access to view and/or edit the transactions contained within them. Using the register can be useful to view the transactions in any account, such as accounts payable or accounts receivable. To open an account register, first ensure that you do not have any screens open within QuickBooks. Then select Banking, then Use Register from the menu bar to open the Use Register window. In the Use Register window, use the Select Account drop-down to choose the desired account, like checking, for example. After selecting the account, click the OK button to continue to the Register window. To record an entry into the Account Register window, use the next available blank row to enter the transaction information. When finished, click the Record button at the bottom of the window to save the transaction. You can view any of the transactions in a register individually by double-clicking the desired transaction to open it within its corresponding form view in QuickBooks. In QuickBooks, you can enter checks directly into the QuickBooks Write Checks window. When you enter a check into this form, you can see address information and easily allocate the check's total amount between multiple accounts if necessary at the bottom of the Write Checks window. This form also corresponds to the check entries made in the register for the selected checking account. To write checks in QuickBooks, select Banking, then Write Checks from the menu bar to display the Write Checks window. Select the checking account from which the funds will be withdrawn from the bank account drop-down at the top of the window. Next, decide whether you will be printing this check or whether you will simply be recording a check or other electronic withdrawal transaction. If recording a check you have already written or recording an electronic withdrawal, enter the check number that was issued into the number field. You can enter your own code for checking withdrawal transactions that lack a code, such as an ATM withdrawal. Otherwise, if you intend to print this check at a later point in time, check the Print Later checkbox that appears in the main tab of the ribbon at the top of the window. Enter the date of the check into the Date field, or select the date from the field's Calendar Date selector. Select the name of the payee from the Pay to the Order of drop-down. The payee's name and address information will appear within the check. Enter the total amount of the check into the Dollars field. When creating checks not related to the purchase of inventory items, you assign the amount of the check to one or more accounts in your company's chart of accounts using the Expenses tab in the lower section of the window. To do this, select the first account to which you want to attribute the check amount from the first row in the Account column. QuickBooks will attribute the entire check amount to that account as shown in the Amount column. To split the total check amount to multiple accounts, simply change the amount shown in the Amount column to indicate how much of the total check amount to attribute to the selected account. Repeat the process of selecting the next account from the next available blank row under the Account column and entering the amount to attribute to that account into the adjacent Amount column until you have distributed the entire check amount to the appropriate accounts. After you have distributed the total check amount to the correct accounts, click either the Save and Close button to save the check and close the Write Checks window, or click the Save and New button to save the check and leave the Write Checks window open so you can continue writing checks. If you don't use purchase orders to acquire inventory item parts you sell to customers, you can write a check to purchase inventory items instead. To write a check for inventory part items you have created within your item list, select Banking, then Write Checks from the menu bar to display the Write Checks window. Fill out the upper portion of the check with the appropriate vendor information. Then indicate which inventory items you are purchasing by clicking the Items tab at the bottom of the Write Checks window and using the Item drop-down to select the inventory parts you are purchasing. Enter each inventory item purchased into a separate row. For each inventory item purchased, enter the quantity purchased. If needed, enter the cost of each inventory item purchased into the Cost column. The total amount of the check will be determined by the total cost of the inventory parts entered into the Items tab. After you have finished listing the purchased inventory on the Items tab, click either the Save and Close button to save the check and close the Write Checks window, or click the Save and New button to save the check and leave the Write Checks window open so you can continue writing checks. You can click the Print Later checkbox that appears in the main tab of the ribbon at the top of the Write Checks window to save it and print it later. To print your checks later, open the Write Checks window by selecting Banking, then Write Checks from the menu bar. To print a single check, use the Previous and Next buttons that appear in the main tab of the ribbon at the top of the Write Checks window to display the check that you want to print. Then click the drop-down arrow on the Print button in the main tab of the ribbon at the top of the Write Checks window. In the drop-down menu that appears, choose the Check command to display a Print Check dialog box where you can enter the check number to print and click the OK button to then launch the Print Checks dialog box where you can set printing options for the check. To print a batch of checks that you have saved and marked to print later, instead open the Write Checks window and click the drop-down arrow on the Print button in the main tab of the ribbon at the top of the Write Checks window. In the drop-down menu that appears, choose the Batch command to display the Select Checks to Print dialog box. In this dialog box, you can remove the check marks from any checks listed that you don't want to print if needed. Ensure that you have the correct account selected from the Bank Account drop-down. Enter the first check number to assign to the batch of checks into the First Check Number field. After you've set the desired options, click the OK button to open the Print Checks dialog box. Place the paper checks into your printer and set any desired printing options in the Print Checks dialog box. This dialog box displays 3 tabs: Settings, Fonts, and Partial Page. On the Settings tab, use the Printer Name drop-down to select the printer that contains the checks you are going to print. If needed, use the Printer Type drop-down to select the type of printer you are using. In the Check Style section, select the option button that corresponds to the check style you will use for printing checks. Your choices are Voucher, Standard, or Wallet. To the right of that, enter the number of copies of each check to print in the Number of Copies text box. You can check the Collate checkbox to ensure they print collated. Check the Print Company Name and Address checkbox to print the company name and address on the checks if they are not pre-printed and you are using either the Voucher or Standard check styles. To print a company logo on the checks, check the Use Logo checkbox. If you haven't loaded a logo yet, click the File button in the Logo dialog box that appears to browse for a logo file for your checks. The logo file must be of an acceptable type for use in QuickBooks. Accepted types include JPEG, GIF, and bitmap file types. The logo must also be a perfect square. The smaller the logo file size, the more quickly the logo will be loaded into QuickBooks and printed on the checks. Also note you can only print a logo on Voucher and Standard check styles, and that you must be in single user mode to load a logo into QuickBooks. Assuming that all these criteria are met, you can load a logo by clicking the File button in the Logo dialog box to open an Open Logo File window, where you can browse for and select the logo file to print on your checks. Click the Open button, and then click the OK button in the message that appears if needed. Then click the OK button in the Logo dialog box to finish. If you have an endorsement signature you want to print on the checks instead of having to sign each check individually, check the Print Signature Image checkbox. You must have your signature image saved as a graphic file before you can add it to the checks. If you do, use the Signature dialog box that appears to select your signature file. You use this dialog box the same way you use the Logo dialog box. Click the File button to launch the Open Logo File window, where you can browse for and select your signature image to use within the checks. You can click the Fonts tab to set the font style to use within checks. You can click the Address Font button to open the Select Address Font dialog box, where you can set the font appearance for the company name and address. Click the OK button when finished to return to the Fonts tab. You can click the Font button to open the Select Font dialog box, where you can choose the font used for most of the text within the checks. However, you cannot change the text used to display the amount. When finished, click the OK button to return to the Fonts tab. You can print partial pages of multi-page checks like the Standard or Wallet sizes by using the Partial Page tab to select the option button that corresponds to the envelope loading style used by the envelope feeder on your printer. After you have set the desired printing options for the checks, click the Print button at the right side of the Print Checks dialog box to print the checks. Before printing the checks, note the total number of checks to print and the total dollar value are displayed at the top of the Print Checks dialog box. This can be a great way to double-check the number of checks to print before actually printing the checks. You can easily transfer money between accounts within QuickBooks by using the Transfer Funds Between Accounts window. You can access this window by selecting Banking, then Transfer Funds from the menu bar. In this window, enter the date of the funds transfer into the Date field. Next, select the bank account to transfer funds from by using the Transfer Funds From drop-down. Then select the name of the account to transfer the funds into by using the Transfer Funds To drop-down. Then enter the amount of the transfer into the Transfer Amount field. When you are ready to save the transaction, click the Save and Close button to record the funds transfer and close the window. Reconciling is the process of ensuring that your checking account record in QuickBooks matches the bank statement for the account. Reconciling your checking account is a very good habit because it allows you to spot bank errors and avoid overdraft fees. When reconciling accounts, the goal is to make the bank statement and your account balance within QuickBooks match. While you will most commonly reconcile your checking account, you can also reconcile several different types of accounts if desired, such as other asset accounts, for example. To begin reconciling an account, select Banking and then Reconcile from the menu bar. In the Begin Reconciliation window, select which account you want to reconcile from the Account drop-down. Enter the statement date from the bank statement of the account you are reconciling with your QuickBooks account. Enter the ending balance from your bank's account statement. Then enter any service charge or interest earned shown on the bank statement but not yet recorded in QuickBooks. To record service charges, enter the amount of service charges into the Service Charges field. Select the date the service charges were assessed from the adjacent Date Calendar selector. Then use the adjacent account drop-down to select the account used to track service charge amounts, such as bank service fees. If the account has gained interest, enter the amount of interest earned as shown on the bank statement into the Interest Earned field. As with service charges, enter the date that the interest was earned into the Date field, and select the income account used to track interest income from the adjacent account drop-down. In QuickBooks, you have a Locate Discrepancies button you can click to launch the Locate Discrepancies dialog box. Here you can click the Discrepancy Report button to view a report that shows any changes to previously cleared transactions from prior account reconciliations. This can be a useful tool for locating data entry errors that can cause reconciliation problems. You can also click the Previous Reports button to select a type of reconciliation report to run. The report will show the transactions marked as cleared from your last account reconciliation. Also notice the Undo Last Reconciliation button shown at the bottom of the Locate Discrepancies and Begin Reconciliation windows. If you click this button, it will undo the last account reconciliation for the selected account. This is an extreme move, and doing it will completely unreconcile the last account reconciliation performed on the selected account. If you are still viewing the Locate Discrepancies window, you can return to the Begin Reconciliation screen by clicking the Restart Reconciliation button. In the Begin Reconciliation window, click the Continue button to view the Reconcile window. In the Reconcile window, place check marks next to the appropriate withdrawals and deposits within this screen that also appear within the bank statement to mark them as cleared. As you do this, the difference shown in the lower right corner of the screen will slowly approach zero. If you try to reconcile the account and the difference amount shown is not zero, you may have to enter an adjustment transaction that modifies the QuickBooks account balance so it will agree with the bank statement. You will still have to account for the difference later, though. So a better idea is to instead try and find the discrepancy between the check register and the banking statement and correct it. If needed, you can exit a reconciliation by clicking the Leave button at the bottom of the Reconcile window. This will not affect the checks and deposits that you have marked as cleared. You can return later by choosing Banking and then Reconcile from the menu bar. However, you will need to re-enter the information in the Begin Reconciliation screen again, and then click the Continue button to return to the Reconcile window. When you're done in the Reconcile window and the difference displayed is zero, click the Reconcile Now button to finish the reconciliation. At this point, a dialog box will appear which allows you to print a reconciliation report if you would like one. You can void a check that you have created if necessary. To void a check, open the check you would like to void and display it within the Write Checks window. Then select Edit and choose the Void Check command from the menu bar to void the check displayed in the Write Checks window. When you click either the Save button within the Main tab of the ribbon at the top of the Write Checks window, or click the Save and Close button at the bottom of the window to save the changes to the check, QuickBooks may offer to create 2 journal entries to maintain the accuracy of your financial reports and account balances. To let QuickBooks make these entries for you, click the Yes button in the message box that appears. If you intend to make these entries yourself, you can click the No, Just Void the Check button instead.